others in as they come in, just so we can get through the sort of the preamble stuff. So you ready, Donna?
Yep, you're recording, so you're all set.
Okay, great. So I'll call the meeting to order at 7:02. This is our regular meeting for Thursday, January 14th, 2021. Right now we have a quorum. We've got, as I said, we've got 6 of our 7 voting members.
And Karen Casey just came in.
Oh, great. Hey, Karen. We've got 7 of our voting members. So plenty of voices. I am going to read quickly the video meeting procedures, since we are still remote, as we can all see. This is a web-based call. We are operating under the following procedures. The session is being audio recorded, just like every other Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. Today, we are also recording the video for the proceedings. To ensure sound quality, the default rule for this meeting should be that everyone will remain on mute. Commissioners and staff members will generally remain on mute except when speaking or voting, and will generally be keeping video of themselves on throughout the meeting. Applicants and members of the public should feel free to leave their video on or off, but we ask that when it's their turn to speak, or if they have a comment to make, that they make that with their video on. If a video isn't available to you, you will not be precluded from speaking or providing a public testimony. And during the public hearings, all the normal rules, including stating and now spelling your name, still apply. And lastly, I would ask that because we are remote and on video, we try to be as patient as we can with each other. Let each of us have time to speak, and then respond as necessary. So with that, I will ask no, we'll move on to agenda item number 3A, which is the regular meeting minutes of December 10, 2020.
I had a comment that in item 6B3, when you all decided to elect me as secretary, you may have appointed somebody else because it says Mark Wintergarten. So if you meant it to be me, you should probably correct the spelling.
Yes, let's change that directly so we know that it's Mark Weingarten.
Thank you, then.
I also had a comment on that 6B3 that that Mark is secretary/treasurer. That's what we should just so the same slate as last year. Does anybody have any other comments? Then I would look for a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll make that motion that we approve the minutes as amended.
And I need a second.
I'll second the motion.
Great. Thanks, Karen. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye. Great. Motion carries. Is there anybody here in the meeting who has business before the commission who is not on the agenda? Great. Okay, so then let's move right into old business. This is agenda item number 5A. And I am going to, we're reopening this public hearing, Donna. Should I reread the notice of public hearing?
You're not reopening it. You never closed it. You tabled it to the next, so you're still open.
So we're still open, so I don't have to read it, so I don't have to read the notice into the
Right.
minutes. Okay, so then I would reopen the public hearing for application numbers 81-20C and 82-20SP, Campland Incorporated, 70 Kenmont Road, map 15, block 22, lot 106, after the fact construction of 2 waterside sheds for weather protection.
Bill Manassi, Mark, or Matt for the applicant, and I'm not on video.
All right, okay. Hi, Bill. How are you?
Good.
Good.
One of the things that the commission had asked for at the last meeting were pictures from above, pictures from across the lake, pictures of the older shed, and pictures of the new sheds, which I scanned in and sent to all you guys because Bill did supply them. They still do not have inland wetlands approval. That will happen hopefully on the 25th of January. The Inland Wetlands Commission acknowledged the notice of violation. The notice of violation is still open. It won't be closed until the commission says, we approve your application, and then that closes the notice of violation at the same time. So they are on the agenda for the 25th.
So at the end of the day, Donna, we could condition our approval if that's where we land on inland wetland approval.
I don't see why not in this case.
Okay.
You know, I know Adam doesn't like the condition approvals, but they're there. So I don't think it's going to be an issue.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Bill, is there anything that you want us to? Is there anything that you want to say before we start our discussion?
Well, Matt, I guess the only thing I can say is that these are essentially sheds. The regulation, I think, when it was amended, I think it was in the 80s. They were late 80s. They were concerned about the camps expanding the number of campers, etc. This is not extra housing. It's not extra bedroom. It's basically changing facilities and a place for the kids to get out of the rain if they get caught at the beach when there's a rainstorm, or more important, lightning. One of them was a replacement of an existing shed, and it's more or less in the same spot. And the other one, I think there was a shed there, but in a different location. Doesn't increase the number of campers. It's just a place for the current campers to go in the event they get caught at the beach. I can't offer any excuses for doing it without the permits. People just didn't know that they needed the permits for this, given that they were sheds. There wasn't much thought given to it at the time.
Donna, is this the camp was pre-existing the zoning regulations, yes?
Yes.
So
anything that they do up there is a special permit. You know, I mean, they put a screen porch on the front of the art building, and they had to get a special permit. You know, I mean, it's just the nature of the beast.
So then that was really my question. I remember the screen porch in front of the art building. I didn't remember that until you just said, because my question was going to be, had they come before the commission previously, and did we ask the questions regarding the number of acres they have and the number of campers they have, and do all of those do they conform with the parameters of the regulations?
I do not believe that we asked them any of those questions when they came before us for the screened porch on the supply building.
The camp has been there since, I believe, the 20s. But again, these two particular buildings don't change the number of campers, don't devote more space to use by the campers. It's cover for them. Again, in the event of inclement weather or place to change their clothes, that type of thing.
Yes, I understand, Bill. I'm just wondering whether now is the time to review what they're doing there.
Set a baseline. You want to set a baseline?
I'm considering that might be appropriate at this time, but I don't know whether it is or not. I'm somewhat on the fence. But there's a whole series of regulations that the camp should be meeting, and we don't have any way of knowing whether they're meeting it or not. You know, which obviously they put up these two new sheds, you know, demolished one and put up two, without us really knowing anything. So does that trigger something for us? Should it? Question for I think the commission.
The current management wasn't involved with it, but if you look at the land records, there are, prior to the present management taking over, there are numerous special permits granted. I don't know if a baseline was established in any of those prior approvals. I also don't know if there's of any of those approvals that changed the number of beds, if you want to phrase it that way, or living quarters or whatever. This doesn't change that. So whatever the baseline is, the baseline's the same. It's not being changed as a result of this application. But I can't tell you what you did previously or what a prior commission did. The regulation was adopted, like I say, in the 80s. I think, quite frankly, as a reaction to two campgrounds, Club Getaway and as well as Treetops, which was a campground that was sold on a timeshare basis on Kenmont. But given the nature of regulations, special permits, and camps, it encompassed all camps, including these. But the regulation stands. I know nobody's disputing that.
Yeah, well, I mean, Matt, maybe one of the things that we can do is just to ask them with the new management to provide just a brief business, I don't want to say plan, but just a brief business description of how they operate, you know, what are their, and I know COVID makes everything kind of wacko because they were not open this year. But under normal circumstances, what do they do? When are they open? How many campers are they allowed? Is there a higher authority that in other words, do they have a license through a different or a higher organization or a different organization that dictates how many people they're allowed to have? You know, I mean, if we can get something like that just for the file for now, I think that would be sufficient if that's what you're looking for.
If I were looking for something, that would be it. You know, the regulations say that, you know, the property has to contain at least 70 acres and that no more than one person is accommodated per 8,000 square feet of lot area, which means that they're allowed not quite 5.5 people per acre. You know, and that all camp facilities are more than 200 feet from property lines, and that there's plenty of access for emergency services, and that they've, in terms of this new construction, this I'll call it new construction, that there's erosion control in place, and there's provisions for stormwater runoff, and as there landscaping and screening buffers, what's the noise impact? You know, all of those things that we would have considered had they come to us prior to. You know, which I think we should have an as-built survey. I think that we should have a.
You have that.
We have it.
Okay, where is it?
I think it was given to you guys in the first packet.
It was, Matt. It was from last month, it's agenda item 6A1 application, and there is a site plan.
Okay, if that's what I'm looking at, then I would say that that's inadequate. You know, it doesn't show, it doesn't appear to show the lot line.
Well, there's
Or-
two maps, Matt.
Okay, Bill. Yeah, I see the two maps, and the one map is sort of close, which shows the sheds and the dock, and the other map is at greater distance, which again doesn't appear to show the property lines, or distance from the property line to the. Hold on.
Do you have, there's two maps. One is the December 17th, 2008 map that shows all of the buildings and actually shows only one of the parcels they own, and they are the abutting owner to the other parcels.
I'm looking at a map that's dated August 98.
Correct. Yep, that's parcel 174 acres.
Okay, so let me ask the balance of the commission what they would like to do. If anything.
I, for one, see this as a wetlands issue primarily. Wetlands hasn't acted on it.
I think that if they had come to us with this, with the rebuilding of one shed and asking about and getting approval for the building of the second shed, this would have been gone forward fairly easily, but they didn't. And they just did it and then claimed that they didn't know that they're supposed to get a permit, which I just don't believe at all. So maybe it is the right time to review what the camp is doing and how many campers there are and what they're approved for, but I don't know what they were approved for. We don't have any of that information, so we'd have to table this for another month.
If I can address just one point that Adam raised, Bill Manassi again. In terms of approval, the campground pre-existed zoning. So I guess the question is, if the answer to that question is not what they've been approved for purposes of planning and zoning, but probably what existed at the time this regulation was adopted. And this regulation was adopted, I believe, in the late 80s, maybe the mid 80s. But before that, it was a permitted use, as I recall. I'd have to check my old files, but I think it was just permitted as of right. I mean, or with a regular zoning permit, it was not a special permit. But I haven't looked at that regulation in 30 some years, so I really thought about it.
Yeah, that brings up a good point though too, Bill, is if you know, maybe if the regulation were written around all of the camps at the time to try to make sure that they didn't become right away a non-conforming use. How has that camp operation changed since then?
Well, it's a conforming use. It's just, it's not that it's a non-conforming use, it's a conforming use. It's permitted by special permit. Now, that's new structures, but the use itself pre-existed, so it's not, and even as a special permit, it's permitted. It's just your regulations require any expansions of camps, expanding in area or additional structures. That's the special permit.
Would you agree, Bill, that if there are more than one person accommodated per 8,000 square feet, that would be a non-conforming use. And we would probably call it a pre-existing non-conforming.
If they didn't comply with the current regulations as to square footage requirements, then yeah, it would be a pre-existing non-conforming use. It would still be entitled to continue, but they have, well, they have an incredible amount of land there, so I'm not quite sure how they could exceed that square footage. That would be a hellacious number of people in there. And I don't think that is the case, but
But we just wouldn't know. And I guess.
yeah, I get that.
My gut says that, that if we don't know where they are now, we don't know whether anything that they do is an expansion of the non-conformity.
Let me just check. Hilton Werner, I think, is the manager. Hilton, are you on here?
Yeah, I'm here.
Are you licensed by the state?
Yes, we are licensed by the state.
Do you know off the top of your head how many campers that the license covers?
You know what? I'd probably have that here. Just give me a minute or two just to try to put it up. I'll be right back.
Okay. Matt, they may answer your question as to the number of campers and what's authorized. I don't know it, but the state apparently oversees something here.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think, Bill, in 1984, because the regulations state all camps, including those in existence as of May 4th, 1984,
Okay.
shall not be expanded in either area, additional structures, or number of sites unless permitted in the zoning district and unless a special permit in accordance with the requirements of the regulations have been approved. I think 1984 was when they
Okay.
wanted the special permit.
All right. That it's somewhere around there, I know. While Hilton's looking at that, Matt, is there anything else I can answer? Are there questions?
Is there anybody in our group here tonight? Are there any neighbors or anybody from the public who would like to make a comment about this public hearing, about this application? So I guess I was most concerned about how these structures affected the neighbors on the lake, and whether there was
Matt,
yes.
I live in the neighborhood and I actually walk there frequently past the camp, especially now that it's quiet. And I actually walked today with my dog. I tend to agree with Wes Wyrick. I think that this really should be tabled until they have a wetlands approval. The sheds that are there, I certainly understand are very much needed, but they are directly on the water. And I don't think it really affects the neighborhood any more than it did in the past. I think the neighbors are quite used to, the sounds of the camp and the use of the waterfront. But I think we should back up, and I think they should obtain their permits from the Wetland Commission.
I'd also say that this is an after the fact permit, so there's really not as long as we have the time, which I believe we do, there's no reason for us to rush through today, and we can ask the camp to provide us with whatever questions we have, the numbers of campers. We can look at what was approved in the past, and take this up next month. We're not holding them up from doing anything, because they've already done it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll provide whatever information you're asking, and happy to do that. Is there anything other than the number of existing campers you're And I don't know, Donna, maybe Donna's got to look through the file, the land use file. I have not looked at the land use file for prior permits. I didn't take that opportunity.
Yeah, I've not done that, but I can definitely do a history of the property if you want.
We may have asked these questions. I don't know if anybody remembers who was on the commission a bunch of years ago, but maybe 7 or 8 years ago, they came before us because they were refurbishing some of the campers' living quarters to bring the quality of them up a little bit. And we probably asked a bunch of these questions then. I just don't remember. It was a long time ago.
Okay, so I would be interested in understanding how big the property is.
Okay.
How many persons, campers and staff members are the maximum number that are accommodated, so that and to be sure that doesn't exceed the 1 person per 8,000 square feet, or that 5.445 persons per acre. I think that I would like to see that the survey with some distances from the property lines. And Bill, I think you're right. If the survey that I have, it's a PDF and it's 11 by 17. The quality is poor, but I think you're right. I do see the property lines identified. Except for that south, I'm going to call it westernmost border. So I see the 3, but it looks like there's a property line along the road there, but then there's some buildings on the other side of the road, and those buildings look like they're within 200 feet of the property line. And then I would like to see the wetlands approval, I think, which is not something that the applicant has to do. And then I would wonder whether they needed to get approval from the DEP, and whether that would be under the purview of the Inland Wetlands Commission to suss out.
Well, I know that the sheds, we had soil survey done, soil scientist. The sheds are in a regulated area, but they're not in the wetlands proper. So I don't think DEP has an issue with that. And it is the Inland Wetlands Commission that's the enforcement agent for the state.
Okay.
Matt, let me go back to the issue on the sidelines. I don't know how long it would take us to get the surveyor out there to plot these buildings. And in looking at the map, what would be the, you have parcel 1, 74 acres, and the abutting owners to the west and to the north are other parcels of this same property owner. So, I mean, I don't see how. It looks to me like they're several hundred feet from any of those boundaries. The assessor's map probably give us a better overview. There are some people to the south, if you will, who and you've got three maps with that. We've got and let me just see if I can quickly run through the acreage here. You've got parcel 1, which is the 74 acres, parcel 2, which is 107 acres, and parcel 3, which is another 20.7 acres. So, I mean, there's quite a bit of land here. but it's all mapped. I mean, for purposes, I think of what your concern is, you could scale it off, I think, with some accuracy. I mean, maybe not from the 11. I can get full-size maps probably from the surveyor, if that's what you want to do, but,
Let me look to see what's in the file first.
okay.
Okay. Yeah, and I know that the majority of these buildings, I mean, they didn't pick them up and move them further away or closer to the property lines, you know, to the lot line. So it's really just coming up with a baseline for what's the nonconformity, so that as we go forward, we're not increasing the nonconformity, but rather decreasing the nonconformity. If so, you know, if there's a building here that they have to replace and it's within 200 feet from the property line, then maybe we could talk about rebuilding it a little bit further away from the property line, even though those properties are owned, they have the same ownership. The same ownership. Because it's not unreasonable to think that at some point, Bill, that the camp might disband and they might sell off the properties, the parcels.
Oh, you know, there's no question about that. I mean, that's always a possibility. Things change. These particular buildings have no foundation. They're literally sheds. They sit on a crushed rock foundation. The floor system is the 4x4s. So while there could be an issue with other buildings, these particular buildings, I think, could never ever be converted to dwelling. I mean, there's no plumbing. There is electric, but there's no heating system. There's no, you know, they're sheds. Actually, what these are those probably the 10 by 12 sheds that people use to store their garden stuff in, just elongated. That's all, and changing rooms inside.
Bill, do you think that there's electricity there?
Yeah.
There is.
There's
In one of the
electricity there.
pictures, you can see the actual
Yeah.
line going into the boys' shed.
That's what I thought. I guess I just misinterpreted the note on the
Yeah.
pictures on the front page, which says no plumbing. I should recognize that there's no comma there. So
Yeah.
There's no plumbing, no foundation, but there is electricity.
Yep.
Okay.
You can see some of the fluorescent lights in some of the photos too.
Yeah.
Well, you see Joe and Stan looking at it. Because their question was, who did the electrical work? Because they didn't get a permit for that either. So, but that's Joe. They have to figure that out.
But Donna said there was never a building permit issue taken out or pulled for
No.
these. So they built them and they ran electric to them.
They're
where
all
the kids
prefab.
are
They didn't
Now-
build them.
inspection.
They installed them and ran electricity into them.
Well, installing them, built them, same thing.
Right.
And
So,
they ran electric into them where the kids are
Right.
without an inspection by an inspector.
and that's how we found out about it. Stan happened to go up there and he came down and he said, you have anything? And I was like, no. And then we went up and started looking and yeah, they were looking at the electrical work. So once they get all of this done, then they're gonna have to satisfy Stan and Joe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry, Matt.
you go ahead, Bill.
I was going to say we have to go through the land use process before we can get to the building department and the fire marshal.
One other concern that I had before I think we maybe want to move on is in one of the photos, they show the fence that was replaced behind some kind of a fence, the shed that was replaced behind some kind of a screen fence. So the picture on the second page of the PDF with the pictures with the boys in the canoe, boys in the boat, as it were, with the circle around what looks like a fence in front of the shed. And then if you look on page 3, the upper right and the mid left appear to show a fence in front of that shed. Does it make any sense for us to request that there's some screening put in front of the new sheds? To screen the sheds from the view of the lake.
speaking from a wetlands point of view, I would think that the Wetlands Commission would not be happy with that.
Okay.
I don't, mostly because I don't think it's necessary. And it's just something else that they're putting in an area that's within, that's within the regulated area that's really not needed.
Okay, and if the neighbors across the lake aren't complaining about these these boxes right on the lake, then if wetlands would rather not have a fence or any screening in front, then I would defer to them. So does anybody else have anything to say before maybe we move to continue the public hearing to our next meeting?
I'll make a motion to continue this meeting till the next, this hearing till the next meeting.
Second. Or Daryl second.
Okay, thanks, Wes and Daryl. Donna, you've got everything that you think you've got a handle on what we're asking?
Yep.
Okay,
I got them all written down, and if I don't have them, Ty has them. Or I can play this back if I want to sit here and listen all over again. We can figure it out. I think so. We're good.
okay, so there's motion on the table. Without any further discussion, then I'll call the vote. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries.
Yeah,
Okay,
so just as an FYI, next meeting is February 11th.
thank you, Bill. Thank you, Hilton. We'll talk to you next month.
Okay, thank you, commission members. Good evening.
Thanks,
Thank you. Good evening.
Okay, so then we're going to move on to agenda item 5B. Planning schedule for the rewrite of the subdivision regulations dated June 1, 95. And I think we'll just move past this with the understanding that we were going to put this off until we were all able to be meeting in person again. I know that's somewhat of a moving target. And I also know that we have some discussion later on in the meeting to talk about some of that subdivision regulation, or at least a portion of that. So I would look for a motion to that effect.
Motion to table.
Second.
Great. Thank you both. All those in favor, so signify by saying aye or raising your hand. Aye. Motion carries. Okay, great. Thanks. Agenda item 6A1. And this is a public hearing. So I will open the public hearing at 7:40.
Matt,
And-
I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay, fine. Karen. 7. I'm going to elevate then Ann to voting status. Okay, Ann? All right, good. Then I'm going to read the notice into the record. The Town of Kent Planning and Zoning Commission shall hold a public hearing via a Zoom meeting on Thursday, January 14th, 2021, beginning at 7 p.m. to discuss and possibly act on application numbers 90-20SP and 91-20C, Matthew and Heather Hannon, 25 Good Hill Estates Road, map 9, block 22, lot 38, conversion of existing detached guest house to a detached dwelling unit. Any corresponding documentation will be attached to the official agenda. At this hearing, persons may participate and be heard. Please note, written communication must be received by the land use office no earlier than 24 hours prior to the meeting, and that the Zoom meeting number can be located on the official agenda that will be filed in the Town of Kent's website a minimum of 24 hours prior to the official Zoom meeting. Matthew Winter, Chairman. Um, With that, Donna, I'll turn it over to you for some background.
Okay, so there is a staff report. Just to go through it really quickly, it's a 5 and almost a 5.5 acre parcel in the rural district. There is a single family residence on that property at this point in time, along with an in-ground pool. They have a detached garage that was permitted in, where is it? With the house at the same time. And then in November of this past year, we issued a change of use in the garage that went from storage above the detached garage to the detached guest house. And they asked if they could go ahead and at least rough in the electric and the plumbing in case they wanted to go ahead and convert it into an accessory dwelling unit. So they have all that plumbing and everything is already in there. So that was all done. And that permit had a stipulation on it that said that before the kitchen could be installed, the change of use from a detached guest house to accessory dwelling detached must be applied for via special permit application. So they are in front of you at this point in time before they decided to go ahead and do the conversion. So now this will be an accessory dwelling, detached dwelling unit. Applicable zoning regulations are 3200.8 and 6200. There's no as-built for the property in the file or filed in the land records. And Torrington Area Health had requested that a new septic system be installed as part of the change. And I don't have an approval or a permit to discharge at this point in time. The applicant had stated on the site plan application that the garage will be attached to the house, but not, at least not for a year. So once the attachment is made, then there's going to have to be a change of use from a single family to a 2-family dwelling. And they'll have to abandon the special permit, which they have for the garage at that point in time.
Just as a point
That's
of
all I have.
interest, Donna, does, would it become a 2-family house or could it be an attached dwelling unit?
It all depends how they go ahead and attach it.
Okay.
Hi,
You know,
thanks
I
for
mean,
having.
if they were just going to do a single breezeway, it's not going to be heated. It's just going to be covered so they can walk from the garage to the main house and not get wet or snowed on. Then, you know, we can look at it as an attached and not as a 2-family house. Although I don't know what the difference is, but
Okay, yeah, but I was just curious, you know, which
Yeah.
where that's not part of this application, so we don't have to spend too much time on it.
Right.
Ms.
I
Hannon?
do not have Torrington Area Health approval yet for this change. I did talk to Kathy the other day. She was waiting for a revision to the plan, which she was hoping to get to today. But I did not hear from her or see any paperwork come through. But she had what she needed and she didn't think it was going to be an issue.
Okay, thanks, Donna.
Okay.
Ms. Hannon, would you like to tell us something about it?
Hi there, thanks for having me. Is your question to the potentially connecting the two together, and would it be a would it be a 2-family house? All of the electrical and the plumbing comes from the existing structure, from the main house, so it wouldn't be. It would just be a breezeway.
Okay. That why I wasn't necessarily asking about your future plans. I was just wondering if there's anything you'd like to say about your current plan.
I'm sorry, I thought you were asking why I started to speak when it wasn't my turn. I thought you wanted me to finish. I'm not really sure. Would you like me to go through everything that Donna just said, or? No.
No, not necessarily. Just if there's something that maybe Donna omitted or is anything else that you'd like us to know. It, you know, just doesn't have to be anything. We can.
I don't believe so. It's just like stated, we're taking the storage area with an extra 2 bedrooms, and we would like to wire it for a potential small kitchen just because if we're doing it now would be the time to do it. That's really it. And it's just a structure basically because I have a lot of children and they're coming home often.
We're just talking about the upstairs of the garage.
Yes,
And Donnie, you mentioned that that part of the parcel is in the Horizon Line district.
Yeah, just the very, I have to orientate myself. Would probably be the northeastern side of the property is at the higher elevation, not where the garage is.
I didn't know that this parcel was. I thought that was just our other parcel. I didn't realize it touched into this one.
Yeah, just a very small portion of it,
Okay,
but all along the whole back edge. And
And
then the property behind is totally in it.
correct.
Yeah.
That edge is lower than houses on Muller Road. I don't know if
Mhm.
that puts it into perspective at all.
But you're not planning on doing anything, tree clearing or additional,
No,
any work? You're just going to be doing work on the inside of the building.
just inside, interior, yes.
The stairs to access the second story, they were already there?
Yes, they're exterior,
Okay, and they were there already.
yes.
Did I see that you had to do, Donna, you said that there's a new.
Yeah,
Yes, we were told we could tie it into our existing, but we decided that didn't feel right, bringing the plumbing back into the house from over there. So we're putting in a new one. And I believe I think the issue at hand was going from, and I may be incorrect, going from just 2 bedrooms to an actual accessory dwelling meant that we need 5 more feet of the septic system. I think that was that's what the engineer had to draw up again, and he submitted that to Kathy.
Oh, an additional 5 feet to the proposed
Yes.
septic field.
The one that we had submitted originally.
Yeah.
Heather, are you adding anything else besides 2 bedrooms and a small kitchen?
I'm so by anything else, what do you mean? No, my answer is no, but just to me,
Like
it's,
a bathroom or,
oh, yes, yes,
so there'll be a bathroom and in a living area, 2 bedrooms, and then a small kitchen.
yes, I'm sorry, yes.
That's okay.
Is there anybody in our group here from the public who would like to make any comments? Why don't we move to, well, let me ask this. Do we approve the requested waivers, Donna, during the public hearing or after?
After,
Okay. So does the commission have any other questions before we close the public hearing? Then I would look for a motion to do so.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Heather, did
Second.
you have a question?
No, I'm just asking. So that's, I'm out?
Not yet.
No, okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Is there any more discussion before we close the public hearing? Then I'll call the vote. All those in favor so signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. Now we have some discussion, deliberation. It sounds like it might be short, but let's tackle the waivers first. The applicant is requesting waivers for requirement numbers 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, and 13. I would look for a motion to grant those waivers.
I'll move that we grant those waivers.
Second.
Great, thanks, Mark and Darrell. And so I'll call the vote. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and or saying aye.
Aye.
Great, motion carries. And then to the application itself, does anybody in the commission have any more comments before we call for a motion? Okay, then I would ask for a motion regarding the application number 90-20 SP and 91-20C.
I'll move that we approve application numbers 90-20 SP and 91-20C. Matthew and Heather Hyman, 25 Good Hill Estates Road, map 9, block 22, lot 38, conversion of existing detached guest house to detached dwelling unit.
Second.
Great, thanks, Mark and Wes. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye. Great, motion carries. James Hannon?
Thank you. Thanks, guys. Everybody stay safe.
Donna, you're on mute. Hold on, don't go anywhere, Heather.
Oh,
You'll get a letter, and with that letter will be, it will be the special permit with the attachments. And then what you need to do is file those on the land records. We'll do a zoning permit. You can go ahead then and start your construction. It's going to be going in the newspaper. Ty, what do you think, Monday? Yeah, either Monday or Saturday. So we'll let you know what the date is that it goes in the newspaper, and then it's 15 days after that. So
Okay.
because there's an appeal process.
I understand. Okay.
If you have any other questions, just give me a call.
Thank you so much, guys.
Okay,
Be safe. Bye.
bye.
Okay, let's move to agenda item number 6B1. Paul Zemansky, it's earlier than it was last month.
Duly noted.
Matt, if you're talking, we can't hear you.
About now.
Yeah, it's your volume is very low.
All right, now?
Yeah, it's better.
Okay. Great. So this is agenda item 6B1 is Paul Zemansky, Arthur H. Howland LLC, proposed changes to section 5, conservation development of the subdivision regulations, and section 3160, village residential conservation development overlay district of the existing zoning regulations. I want to start out by saying that that this is somewhat misleading. the description here because.
My
there's no
description?
se- There's no section 3160 in the existing regulations.
Yes, there is.
It would be a new section.
It's a new section. And I was confused because, Paul, did you format it?
Yes, I mimicked the RU1 conservation development regulation that you guys had carefully crafted previously for the RU1 district.
So I would say that it would be better for me
Oh.
to have seen that without the formatting, because it took me it took me a while to realize that based on this description and based on the formatting that I wasn't looking at something that we had crafted, that this is something that you're crafting and suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, if you want me to talk now, I'll kind of
Sure.
explain, or is that okay or no?
Absolutely. Yes, go ahead. Paul.
Okay, cool. So basically, I was a little bit brief at the last meeting, but you guys, as part of your rewrite of the zoning regulations, your section 5200 was the conservation development overlay district, which was applicable to the RU1 zone. And I could see as I went through the regulations and reviewed them in their entirety, that there was a lot of thought and a conscientious approach to that, in which there would be 50% of the open space, 50% of the property set aside as open space, and in return, some of the lot standards were relaxed, but it would basically be the same number of lots as a typical subdivision, with the intent being that half the property be preserved as open space. And I think imitation is the sincerest form of flattery. So in looking at that, I looked at how I could basically create a regulation for the village residential zones, VR1 and VR2, basically utilizing to the greatest extent possible the language and all the hard work that you guys had already done in the RU1 zone. So I'd looked at the numbering of your regulations. 3160 appeared to be where it would fit best. So I'll just explain. It's pretty simple. The modifications that were made in the RU1 Conservation Development Overlay District. It's applicable to a minimum property size of 20 acres. As you know, it's a larger minimum lot area there. For the VR1 and VR2 conservation development, I had reduced that from 20 acres to 10 acres. I did very similar on developing the minimum lot size, where you just do a simple division. The only difference is your RU1 zone is soils based, whereas your VR1 and VR2 zones are area based. So I kept that same methodology as it related to primary and secondary conservation areas. That language I kept the same. It's great language. Because the overall lot sizes are smaller in the village residential area, I slightly decreased the open space set aside from 50% to 40% of the property. As it relates to lot sizes, in the current conservation district overlay had the current VR1 minimum lot size is 10,000 square feet. I reduced it to 5,000 square feet. And the VR2 would be reduced from 30,000 to 15,000 square feet. It should be noted that in your regulations currently, I don't know if you guys are aware, in section 3124, you guys actually allow multiple dwellings on one property at a density of 1 dwelling unit per 4,000 square feet. So this concept would be less dense than the multiple dwelling regulation that you already have in your regulations. And then I just proposed minor relaxation of the setbacks. For instance, the minimum front yard setback would remain the same. Side yard setback would slightly reduce from 30 feet to 20 feet. rear yard setback would slightly reduce from 30 feet to 20 feet. One interesting thing that I'm proposing is a reduction in the building coverage. So although you would have smaller lots, you would actually have less coverage. I thought that was in keeping with the character of a conservation subdivision, where we would want to minimize impervious surface. Because when you're doing a set aside of open space, that typically decreases your public streets. So my thoughts in reading the intent and purpose of conservation subdivisions is to also mimic overall impervious surfaces. So I decreased principal building coverage from 15% to 10% and accessory building coverage from 20% to 15%. So basically it would, compared to a conventional subdivision, it would lead to less infrastructure and less impervious surface on each individual lot. So that's the zoning aspect. What I then noted was, as you alluded to earlier in the agenda, the subdivision regulations, which were written some time ago, they actually conflict the way that they're currently written with your current conservation development overlay district zone in the RU1 zone. So what I looked at was how I could simplify the subdivision regulation to more or less refer to the zoning regulation in its entirety. This way, if you guys make adjustments between your regulations over time, you wouldn't have to worry about future conflicts. But I did leave within the subdivision regulations the water supply and sewage disposal aspect, because that currently wasn't in the zoning conservation development overlay district regulation to the level of detail that's currently in your subdivision regulations. And as well as the fact of providing a fire pond in accordance with the zoning regulations. And just that the site layout and architectural style in your subdivision regulations, which is not in your zoning regs, where it states that the building shall be located to retain existing topography and natural features of the land to the greatest extent possible, and an overall architectural theme or style shall be established for all dwellings and accessory structures to assure an overall harmony of roof lines, sizes, facades, materials, and colors. So that's it in a nutshell.
Okay, just for a point of order, Adam, are you seated back? You're right. You're back in, right? Okay, so Ann, I'm gonna
Yes, I'm in.
strip you of your voting status. And then Donna, do you have anything to add to Paul's description of what he's done?
No.
So I'm going to open it up to the commission to see if anybody on the commission has any comments regarding this proposed. I'm sorry, before I do that, Donna, does this have to go to a public hearing?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll have to follow all of the regular guidelines for a change to the regulations. Probably wouldn't be until March in order to meet the state statute requirements for notification 30 days and all that kind of stuff. So I need to check to make sure that none of the executive orders have changed any of that. It could be that instead of things being sent certified, that I would have to notify the adjoining towns and the adjoining town clerks via email with just a regular mail instead of a certified mail, advising them of this. So, but we'd have to follow all the regular procedures.
Okay. All right. Do any commission members have anything any thoughts on what's being proposed?
I honestly, I really need to sit down and read through this much more carefully and think about when we made the previous regulation, what bore that out. But it looks like, Paul did a really great and conscientious job.
Thank you, Adam. And I'll put everything I said tonight, I'll put in an easy to read format in writing so you guys don't have to go back to the video tonight. And I'll just do a point by point, easy to follow comparison.
Thank you.
Great.
I'm a little concerned that parsing through this proposal is pretty difficult, pretty technical. I'm wondering whether we should just put it to the consultant we used when we rewrote the zoning regs and get their view. Or his view, whatever his name was.
I think that's a really good idea, honestly.
Too.
We have money in the budget. Yeah, I mean, that was one of the things when Glenn Chalder, who was the one who wrote the regs, when he was done with the process, we did ask him if he would kind of be available to us. So we've always kind of just tucked money away, and every year I just keep renewing it. You know, and see if I can get some feedback from him. I don't see any reason why not.
So if that's something that we have to make a motion for, I think Mark made that motion and I'll second it.
Then as far as a discussion on that, would we enlist Glenn right away, or would we hash through what we believe? Should we answer some basic questions before we ask Glenn to, or should we ask Glenn to go through it and ask us those basic questions?
Why don't we get it to Glenn and see if we can't either have him come to the next meeting or do a special meeting? Because the time, you know, I mean, for changing the regulations, it's not just a one meeting thing. You know, it's going to take a couple, it's a much longer process.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table in a second. Let's take a vote to see, and the motion is to send this draft to Glenn Chalder and ask him to take a look and report back. So all those in favor, so signify by raising your hand and saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. Okay.
Thanks for your time, everyone.
All right, so now do you want to do a special meeting with Glenn and Paul? Do you want me to start the process to have this on the March agenda? Otherwise, you're going to end up having to wait now until April. I don't, you know, I mean, if I can get the ball rolling at this point in time and figure out what my timing is, then maybe we could kind of schedule something in between.
I think that's a good idea, Donna. You know, that way it's not a marathon meeting with whatever else we have going on. We could schedule, you know, an hour and a half and just talk things through. I have some thoughts about the zoning in the is it the RU? It's not it's the VR2 and the VR1, and I think that the minimum lot size of 30,000 feet in the RU2 is somewhat based upon what we've got in the RU1. And it's somewhat based upon tying into the sewer. I think that if we're not going to, I think if there's no provision to tie into the sewer, then that density is the 30,000 feet is too dense. And an argument can be made by looking at the regulations. Paul mentioned the multiple dwelling, and that there should be a minimum lot size of 1 acre. If we're going to be using a soil-based approach, meaning if we're going to have individual SSDSs, then I think that we have to tie this not back to, as Paul's suggesting, 3140, but we have to tie it back to 3150, which is the soil 30. I'm sorry, nope, it's 3240. Yeah, it's instead of 3140, it's 3240, which brings us back to a soil-based approach. And I think that's the difference, that we're a soil-based approach when we don't have access to town sewer, but we're an area-based approach when we have access to sewer. For me, that's the kicker.
Yeah, that's prudent, Matt. And I'll look at where the sewer service area is, and I think it's close, if not to having the potential to encompass the entire VR 1 and 2. So I'll do some research on that.
Okay.
I
And,
think
you know,
it,
just
I think it does. I think if I remember them talking to Alyssa about sewer, there is a manhole on 7.
By the church, I think, yeah. And it can be
um,
extended easily.
Right, and at the end of that, that's where the soil-based zoning kicks in. That's where the rural district kicks in.
Yeah, let me take some time. You guys aren't getting paid to be here. I am. So I'll do some research as a starting point.
great. Thanks, Paul. And you know, that's if you think about the character of that neighborhood as we're leaving town on the west side, you
Yep.
really start to get into almost what I would consider the RU. I was surprised to see that we were in the VR2 there.
Yep.
So you've got a series of houses that are, you know, on larger, they're smaller houses on larger parcels, and even as you get past right across the street from the church, we start to get into the larger sizes.
Yep.
So
Understood.
think about, as a commission, let's think about the character there and the density, and while keeping in mind that the applicant has or the potential applicant has, they're looking at our current regulations with having made the decision to do what they've done with that property. All right.
Understood. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Paul.
Have a
Thanks,
great evening.
Paul.
Okay, so we are now that went faster than I thought it was going to go. So
We need a motion to table this to the next meeting.
I make that motion to table it till the next meeting.
Second.
okay, great. I'm gonna thank Wes for that one, Daryl. And thank you, Adam. So there's a motion on the table to table this until the next meeting, which may or may not be a special meeting. Donna will let us know. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand or saying aye. Aye. Okay, motion carries. So still went faster than I thought it was going to. Okay, so the next agenda item is 6B2, which is the POCD. But I think that it makes sense to move up agenda item 6B3 and possibly 6B4. Does that make any sense?
Yes.
I make that motion that we move up 6B3 and 6B4.
Okay, great.
I'll second.
Thank you both. All those in favor, so signify by raising your hand saying aye. Aye. Okay. Okay, so we are going to go right to 6B3, proposal by Gina Olson, owner of Chestnut Woodworking and Antique Flooring Company, and Taro in Time for outdoor shopping and monthly music events, 31 North Main Street, map 19, block 14, lot 1. Donna, would you please take us through the application, and then we can open it up to Ms. Olson?
Okay, it's not an application. It's really a discussion at this point in time. During when COVID first started, I had talked to Gina, and we had allowed her to put some of her stuff outside, and then she was having music, and I don't think she had that much music. My main concern was, trying to get business into town, but still being cautious and aware of what the executive orders had to say about gatherings and distances and that kind of thing. Well, it seems like it had worked out fine, and so now Gina had she knew that this was just going to be a temporary thing. And if she wanted to do something a little bit more permanent, she was going to have to come in and talk to you guys in order to determine whether or not it would be something that you would be willing to allow. We just have to figure out kind of how she was going to be able to do it. But the request is to actually set up tables on the weekend for her products. So it's not that she's going to be doing like a merchandise display, which is allowed through the regulations. She's actually going to be setting up tables, almost like the sidewalk sales, but on a more intense use, more often. And then she also would like to do the music. And I said, at this point, I don't have the authority to go ahead and decide to do that. We did it at the very beginning for COVID, just to kind of get the businesses through the summer. But for you guys to decide on something a little bit more permanent, it would have to be up to you to do that and not me. And then we have to figure out the vehicle in which to do that, whether it's just going to be site plan, whether you think the regulations have to change, is music an accessory use to what she's currently doing now, you know, that kind of stuff. So it's just kind of at this point in time, a general discussion. So I don't know, Gina's on mute. If you'd like to ask her some questions, she could unmute herself and answer. There you go.
Hi, thank you. Do you want me to start or do you want to ask me questions?
Dawn, I have a question. This is Alice. Just clarification, you mentioned that the tables would not be the normal business merchandise, or they would be the normal business merchandise?
It would not. If you look at merchandise display, it's like a very small area. It's kind of, it's like if you, like Ellen Corsell, she'll put out a rack of clothes on her front porch, that kind of thing. I think this is going to be a little bit more than that, and it's not going to be on the front porch.
Okay. So it is the merchandise of the store, though.
Well, you had said that you might be using other things too.
It would be merchandise from the store, and then we're working with a lot of local vendors. So we'd like to have them come in as guest vendors and maybe set up in the lawn, and then we would stock some of their best sellers. So just to give people an opportunity, I know a lot of people aren't comfortable with shopping indoors yet. And so we were thinking ahead for the spring. I didn't want to be, you know, I had been in communication with Donna when we were planning events. She had worked well with me to allow us to do some things to get through 2020. We're just thinking ahead to 2021 that if people are not yet comfortable, that we'd like to have an option to be able to do something on that beautiful front lawn. So it would be, you know, it would just be, I didn't want to start planning ahead until I spoke with you, that if I could book some vendors to come in, and these would be items that we would be carrying in the shop, just we might not carry all of them. The vendor might come with more than we have the space for. But we'd also like to extend some of our regular product out there too. As for the music, we had done some socially distanced events. They were really small. We rented chairs. We kept it we had one person in charge of making sure it was separate, everyone was separated and that masks were worn. We would like to continue doing that if possible.
Gina?
Yes.
Hi. I think the music is a great idea. My hesitation is that if we allow you to do it, then we have to allow everybody to do it. And I think maybe a more controlled option would be for you to work through the chamber and maybe set up a schedule for the 8 or 10 or 12 weeks or whatever it is that you're looking at. And thereby you could give all the merchants a chance to participate, and it would still be, you know, be easier to control.
Okay. I'm open to that idea. I don't know how it works, so I just thought I started with Donna. Wasn't sure where to start. You know, the front lawn there is so large. It's so pretty. Not all the stores have that. So yes. I'm
No,
open.
but Thurston does Music on Main. So they have music and there are some shops that, you know, maybe want to participate. I know Pizza Garden does music too.
So the Pizza Garden does music because it's accessory to their restaurant. Is that right? It seems to me it seems to me that's looking at it from a different vantage point. We have, as a commission, made some concessions to some businesses in town for the COVID, right? So there's a drive-through that we've allowed to operate because it helps that particular business. And I think that this idea is something that we could get behind as somewhat of a temporary measure for alleviating some of the pressures on the local businesses where, as Gina said, people aren't really interested in coming inside. I think that, so in terms of a mechanism, Donna, I think that we could permit it on a temporary basis.
Well, I think Ann's suggestion of working with the chamber is a great idea. Because I think the last thing that we want to have is a music festival on Main Street. And then, of course, then, you know, everybody's going to take it the next step further and say it's going to bring in all the motorcycles and, you know, and it's going to be really loud. And but so kind of setting it up through the chamber, if we could get a letter from the chamber that said, this is kind of what we were thinking, and we would agree to, you know, doing music at Thurston's on this day, music at Gina's this day. I know the Barnes, they have music on another day. I think that there's a chamber ensemble or something that comes there. That if they could all get on the same page, then we could just say, okay, you know, just kind of let the commission put their stamp of approval on it, and everybody has to abide by that particular schedule for the spring, summer, and maybe possibly into the fall of 2021. I don't know if it's something that you want to have, you know, to do on a yearly basis, as kind of, I know there's something in the regulations. I know Glenn had talked about doing like temporary events, you know, it's just kind of not something that's permanent. It's something that just kind of happens, and, you know, maybe we could tie it into that and just agree to it, like I said, just on a seasonal basis for 2021. And then next year, if it works and it's manageable, then they come back with the next schedule, and then we approve that for 2022.
I guess that's my question, and maybe you answered it, is what is the mechanism? What is the regulation that we allow this? I mean, do we have to create a new regulation? I'm just not sure. When I look through, I don't see where we allow this, where we allow a temporary thing. Is this initial application, Gina, really going to end when COVID ends? I mean, I like Donna's idea of that, you know, this could be a really nice thing in town for something like this to happen. But at the same time, I wonder, so if Gina has her goods out on the front lawn, and then half the other stores that have front lawns, they want to bring all of their goods out onto the front lawn during nice weather, and then town is on the front lawn, and maybe that's fine. I'm not saying it's not, but this can't be just something for Gina. We're talking about every shop in town may want to do this, and maybe that's fine.
Yeah,
still-
I wasn't talking about I wasn't talking about the display of merchandise, but if you go to section 9300, which is temporary uses, you know, maybe we could figure out a way of getting it in there for a temporary use, because it's not something that is permanent and is always happening. It is temporary. You know, it says special events within any zoning district, the commission may authorize a temporary special event not listed above, limited to one. You know, it's one per property per calendar year. Like, there's got to be a way of trying to figure it out. That's what I'm saying, you know.
I'm just wondering what that is.
Right.
Because I think it would be a great thing, and but there's two different things here. One is is selling on the front lawn, and the other is having live music.
And the music, I understand the complications of, because we did, you know, you could hear Camp Pizza Gardens music and we weren't aware of what dates they were doing it. So I understand that's something that I definitely would need to check with everyone else about what they're doing, so the sound wasn't bouncing around like crazy. But the idea of vending, I guess, is more what we're looking for, because it's just to keep us going through COVID. It just gives us a little more allure and just more, you know, healthy way to shop. So I'm flexible. You know, I'm just here to see what is possible, but I do understand the complication of the music.
So would you be charging the vendors to be in front?
I was thinking that I would charge them a commission, just like I would charge them if their products are in my store. So I would just be taking a commission of their sales.
I gotta say, I had a bit of a concern with the third-party vendors. I'm all in favor of supporting your local business and having you sell on your front lawn in nice weather, but having third-party vendors do that as well, to me, you know, I don't mean to be derogatory. That's almost a flea market, and it's not something I would like to see the other stores do either. You know, where they're not just displaying and selling their own products, but they have all kinds of third-party vendors in. I think that opens the door to too much. I don't know if anybody else has the same view, but that troubled me. Having third-party vendors gives me some concern.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I was looking at it more of like a guest vendor of the weekend that we already do business with. So we try to shop local as much as we can. We deal with a lot of fair trade companies. So I was just thinking that I know my vendors are struggling, and I thought that this would be a good way to promote them and promote us.
Yeah.
Kind of support the small business, but it would really be, I wouldn't be booking, it would be like one guest vendor per weekend is what I was imagining.
Well, it certainly seems like there's interests from the commission members to find a way to make this work within some parameters of what sort of wares can be sold, how many tables you're allowed, whether you can, as you said, or as you request in the letter, keep the tents up overnight from Friday to Saturday to Sunday, whether or not we have the music as a sort of a separate discussion, whether it's the vending tables and then the music. I like the idea of having the village center more vibrant. I think that within certain parameters, it could be good for the good for the economics of the town. So I'm all for it. But yeah, I think you have to. I think, Donna, you have to be a little creative.
I can check to see what does what a peddler's license type thing through the chairman, through the Board of Selectmen's office. How does that work? I wonder if it could fit under there instead. And then it wouldn't be, it would be us allowing the placement of the tables. I don't know. I mean, that's the only thing that, you know, if it's going to be third party, is it a set place for a peddler? I have to see what a peddler's license is in the description under the Board of Selectmen.
Alice, go ahead.
This is probably crazy, but as I recall, there is a driveway or a road on both sides of the property, correct?
Yeah, there's Lane Street on one side. and there's
Lane
driveway.
Street, yeah. Is there any safety issue here with tables and chairs and people and the turning mechanism going in and out of those lanes? What you see as you turn onto Main Street? It's a question. I don't have the answer. I mean, there are other, like you mentioned, Heron, there's no driveway there. Well, maybe, no. I mean, I could just picture a traffic jam or something and you can't see and there are people and is that a problem?
I was kind of envisioning it like almost like when a bookstore has, you know, a book signing and it would be the vendors there, you get to meet the person who makes the products. It wouldn't be huge. It would just be one vendor at a time. So it really wouldn't be a lot of tables. It'd probably be like one, you know, we'd have to agree on it, but like maybe just, I have like a tent from doing home shows that I could use.
But see that the very thing is a tent. Does a tent in any way encumber a driver's view of coming out of one of those lanes onto the street? I don't know. I mean, yeah, I realize you're not talking about 50 vendors out there. That's not really my question. My question is there any sort of safety issue to be concerned?
Pretty big yard. And that side street next to us is not really used much on the side of the yellow.
It only takes once.
Alice, I think you're right that there would be something that we'd have to look at, you know, so we'd have to be some setback off of I think it's a little bit safer because at least along Main Street and at least along Lane Street, there's a sidewalk, which gives you a little bit of buffer.
Right. Yeah.
There's not so much of a sidewalk at the driveway. But I think that something could be done with some setback requirements.
But again, my point is if we say yes to Gina, then we have to say yes to everybody who wants to bring in outside vendors. And again, I think it's a great idea. And having been a merchant, I understand the merit. But I think, again, if the chamber came up with, you know, this Saturday, Gina's going to have a guest vendor. The next Saturday, the bookshop is going to have a guest vendor, and so on. I think if everybody follows suit, it is going to be a safety issue. And it's going to be a circus.
The issue is the vendors. I mean, is it make any difference if I'm just putting out product that I have, or if I have the vendor there? Is that where we're getting tripped up, or it's just the idea of anything outside?
I think you're onto something with that. Instead of making it so complicated, why don't you sell the vendor's products on consignment? And as far as the music goes, I think the idea of having a calendar and a schedule of who's doing music certain days of the month, probably on a weekend, is a less, complicated issue also. And otherwise, I think the theory here is if you're going to start putting your stuff out and there's additional third-party vendors, it's going to get very complicated and messy for the town. And I don't know how the heck we would regulate it. So I think the solution might be you take these products on consignment. Maybe you have, like you're saying, a book, signing day where the vendor is there briefly, and keep it simple like that. And then join hands with the chamber and say, okay, let's have music this May and June, and get that organized. And then we won't have to go crazy changing regulations, and everybody can get their chance.
Yeah, and I like the idea of running the music through the chamber. I think they'd be, they've already had the second Saturday thing going on, so that totally makes sense. And as far as, the third party, it's more just me putting product out. These are most of the vendors that we stock now. It was just the idea of being able to say, meet the vendor.
Yeah.
Daryl, you had a question.
I was going to point out that I think there's plenty of opportunity to be creative and consistent. We granted the coffee shop the ability to use their drive-through because they actually have a drive-through. We disallowed other businesses from pursuing that route because they're not set up for it. Here you have a business that has a huge front yard on Main Street. I think they should be able to utilize it more fully during, our current set of circumstances. So not every business is going to have the same capacity to be creative in the same way during this. Our timeline for the coffee shop is somewhat tied to straight restrictions and regulations. Why can't the usage, the expanded usage in this situation also be tied to it with an overlay of us, looking at the site and making suggestions in terms of setback from the sidewalk and the roadways. But it seems like it's analogous that if a coffee shop has a drive-through, we allow them to use it during this time period. If a business has a large front yard, they should be able to expand their vending capacity.
I don't disagree with that. I think certainly this property has a larger front yard than all of the others. But there's a bunch of properties there that have front yards, and I don't think it's bad if people take their goods, especially now with COVID, and put them out there. The shops that are directly across the street from Giffords, there's a fence there that goes along the edge of the sidewalk, and they have a decent amount of space that they could put their goods out, and maybe that's not a bad thing. And it allows people to shop and not go inside. But if we allow this, I think we have to allow it for everybody who has the room to be able to do it.
And I just want to be clear, I was not objecting to a store putting their merchandise out front. I didn't think that having third-party vendors was a clear-cut idea.
So in terms of in terms of the outdoor vending, it seems that that there could be some expansion to the sale days, and I don't know how I don't think we're involved in that. I think that's more with the selectman's office. It could be
I just kind of go away that weekend. And I mean, it's something that, they've been doing for years. It's a big thing for the town and I'm not gonna regulate one thing, I mean, I look at the business owners as understanding that they are responsible and they are liable for anybody that is on their property. And if they can't manage that and something happens, it's not the town's fault, it's their fault. So it's just part of their business plan. And that's how I look at the sidewalk sale. They understand that they're responsible if something happens to anybody that comes onto their property, and they better darn make sure that the tables are all set up correctly and that the tents are all secured, correctly. And I just don't regulate the tents, and I don't, I just say, have a good time. I hope it's successful. And I do, I go away for the weekend. So I don't understand. I mean, I think that we could probably do the same thing. The selectman's office doesn't have anything to do with it. It was just something that the chamber had done, and Jennifer never regulated it. And as long as nobody's gotten hurt and it's a successful thing for the town, then it's kind of understood that we just let it go and do its thing. I think that having a schedule with the chamber for the music is essential. Because you're going to end up with, the trumpet from the Pizza Garden is going to be blowing out the ensemble from Sharon at the Barns, and then who can hear the drums from another place. So it just is. I think it's more organized. I think it makes Kent look like it's an organized town that cares about its businesses and cares about what the businesses want to do with their shoppers and how it can benefit everybody. And I think it's just better to have it organized than for it to just be willy-nilly, we're having music this weekend type thing.
So where do you suggest that Gina go from here? And what are we as a commission, what's our advice to her?
Well, there is, if you look at section 4131.4 in the regulations, and that talks about the accessory display of merchandise, it's as of right. They don't need a permit or anything like that. It just says that the display is located immediately adjacent to the building. It does not extend more than 3 feet from the building, and it does not interfere with pedestrian or vehicular circulation or emergency access. There's nothing else that talks about that anywhere else. So unless we just allow them to do it as of right, and for the time being, waive the distances during, at least, to allow them to have more because the store is shut because of COVID. I think we would be okay with that.
I mean, the store inside will still be open. It's just not everybody wants to go in.
Right.
We're not going to want to set up anything excessive because we have to move it all back and forth.
Exactly.
So it's going to be reasonable. It was just something to catch people's eye that are afraid to go inside.
So are you talking about it's a covered tent that's 8 by 8 or 10 by 10? That's.
I have a tent that has sides that can be removed just so that if it rained, there's some coverage. I don't, I'm open to if you'll let me use that or not.
What's the size of that though, Gina?
I would have to check. It's like a traditional vending tent. I could get back to you with size. I don't know.
So it's so to get back to Donna's suggestion, maybe that we maybe not ignore the distance from the shop, but we increase it for this time period, right? So we say that's in which way we as a commission agree that vendors can extend, instead of 3 feet, they can extend no more than 10 feet or no more than 12 feet. As long as, again, the display doesn't interfere with pedestrian or vehicle circulation or emergency access. It seems like that would be the simplest thing for us to do on a temporary basis, just answering the selling of wares outside of a business.
Matt, instead of putting a limit on the number of feet, because each of these properties is is a little different. What if we say that they can utilize the property in front of their stores, but they can't get onto town property, which is the sidewalk. I mean, why?
I'm not sure. I don't know. 31 North Main, as we were talking about, that's got it's got a lot of frontage, right? It's got, there's a lot of lawn there that they could utilize. I'm not sure that, notwithstanding, and I know I understand your and Adam's comments from before that, just because somebody doesn't have the property doesn't mean that somebody else who does have the property should be penalized, because everything has to be sort of communistic. But I'm not sure that I would want to see the property at 31 North being completely covered with tables. And that's not what Gina seems to be suggesting. So I think I would prefer to have a distance. It's more in keeping with our regulations, and it's just an easing of the regulations for where we are today in this new or continuing reality.
I do believe during the sidewalk sales last year, there was 2 big tents up in that front lawn not when I was there, the last tenant. So I don't think there was any obstruction problems that they had. I don't know how they got permission to do that at the sidewalk sales. I do believe the tent that I have is 10 by 10. It would be nice to not have to put it directly up against the building, because that would block our front porch area that we use for visibility. So it would be nice to be able to put it out a little bit farther. But it's pretty big lawn.
All right, so here's what I suggest. Donna, would you talk to Gina a little bit more about this? I mean, we're in January now. We're not gonna want to do anything until late March or April, right? So maybe mid-March, right? So I think we've got a little bit of time to hash this out. So if Gina and Donna would get together and talk it through. Donna, you can think about what maybe what the selectmen might do within in their regulations for a peddler license. And then Gina, if you would speak with the chamber about the music and see if there's something you could work out, and then maybe we can talk next month.
Absolutely. Thank you for listening.
Sure. Is that okay with everybody else? Does that sound like a path forward?
I'm not going to agree with you on this, Matt. I would like to work with the chamber as a municipality and come up with a cohesive plan.
The chamber for all components of it, and with the music and with
I think the idea has great merit. I think it's a wonderful idea, but I think we have to move forward in an organized way.
If that was the case, can we pick up this discussion next month and invite some representatives from the chamber to discuss this? They may have some great thoughts on how we can regulate this and make it work.
I think that's a great idea. And Gina, you're a board member, right, of the chamber? So, why don't you get together with the board and come back at the next meeting? I think it's a great idea.
If we're going to go down that road, could we, rather than invite the chamber to our meeting, could we have maybe a representative from the chamber come and talk to us about what progress they've made in the discussion, so that we're not having the open forum, so they're bringing their ideas to us through a conduit?
That's what I meant. I wasn't thinking that we would invite the whole chamber. I thought we would invite the president of the chamber, or whoever's going to be the representative, to come in and tell us what their thoughts are on this.
I'm a new member, so it would make sense to have the president or the vice, or I think there's 2 presidents now co-chairing.
Yeah, one is the owner of your property, isn't it? Right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then the other one is
Sarah Marshall.
Sarah Marsh from the library.
But you'll still
Yeah,
come too,
I'll
though, right,
talk to
Gina?
them at the next meeting about it, and especially about the music, and then see what ideas they have, and then we can revisit this next month.
Yeah.
That sounds great. Okay, thanks, Ann, for the set. I'm happy to go your way.
Okay. Sounds
All right,
good. We'll
then.
leave it on the
Thanks.
agenda.
Good. See you next month, Gina.
February, can you tell me the date? I'm sorry, February.
11, February 11th.
Second
February
Thursday.
11th. Okay, thank you.
All right, bye-bye. Okay, so then we'll move on to agenda item 6B4, which is the request for determination from the commission for conversion of 9, 11, and 13 Railroad Street to multifamily residential use.
Matt, I'm going to recuse myself from this.
Okay,
Thank you.
Karen. And then I will elevate Ann to voting status. If you would accept the mission, Ann. Okay, so there's a request to talk about this change from the change to a multifamily residential. Donna, do you have any comments before we ask the potential applicant to tell us what they're thinking?
I think the main problem becomes, if you know the pizza property, it's the one that's next door to the Pizza Garden. And currently, right now, there's a house, there's a little building, and then there's a railroad car. And the idea is, and you guys have always talked about the possibility of bringing more residential areas or apartments into the village center commercial. We don't need any more commercial space. But if you look at the village center commercial regulations, there's nothing that will allow this configuration to fit into any of the definitions. So it can't be a motel. It's not a hotel. They're not multifamily because they each have their own separate entrances, and according to the fire code, multifamilies share one main entrance. So these are single family residences. The fire marshal only is involved with those structures in their commercial aspect. So the idea is trying to find a way to regroup those three buildings so that they can be used as residential structures. And that's what that is what the proposal is. And the actual proposal is a possible change to the zoning regulations to bring in from Village Center Residential 1 over into the commercial district so that they could use this as residences to either live in themselves or to rent out. Am I right, Mr. McPhee?
That's correct. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for talking with us tonight. I have my son Andrew here following along. He's a recent Parsons grad, so he's into design. And our architects, at least on my screen on the bottom here, Tassos.
Yeah, Tassos.
And Tassos and I have worked together quite a bit. I'll just give you a 3-minute background on who we are and why we're invading your town. And so I'm originally from California and went to school at Santa Clara University. And while I was in school, younger than Andrew, I bought my first house. And I ended up owning 20 houses that were pretty much surrounded Santa Clara University, which then became the center of Silicon Valley. And it turned out to be really good. And those were a mixture of 1890s Victorians, craftsman bungalows. Many of them had historical designations from the town. And we fixed them up, and it was really a great experience. other than maybe cleaning the units ourselves after tenants moved out. But we've outgrown that. And my day-to-day for the last 10 years, I've been the president of Design Within Reach, the modern retailer. So, I have a lot of background in design, opened 50 stores across the country. And I sold that business with my partners a couple of years ago, stayed working for them, but recently thought I was retiring, but got sucked back into running a public company with a friend of mine, and we're in the women's fashion industry. So we certainly know a lot about retail and what's happening and the over retailing that happened in America. And, I think this is an example. I mean, certainly if the guitar store could still be there, that would be a super cool use, and we'd love to have that. But, they've done such a good job, Hiram and his partners at Kent Barnes, and we're good friends with Greg and Natalie there. And, if you're going to open a retail store in Kent, you're probably going to open it either at the Barnes or in the Green, not in a converted railroad car. So I think the opportunity here is, a greater use would be for residential. And these buildings have actually been pretty well maintained. And it's interesting because at some point, I'm sure you're aware, they were converted to commercial condos. So even though they're not multifamily, the utilities all come into one of the units, right? They're all ganged on the back of the yellow building, the one that's closest to the Pizza Garden. So there's some mixed, of utilities coming in there. I think there's an opportunity to put the parking for these, take it out of the parking lot that this property shares ownership with the Pizza Garden, and have spaces that service the units individually off the back of the property, accessing from the access way next to the Welcome Center. I think there's an opportunity to upgrade the buildings. The yellow one's in decent shape, but it had a strange door that can't be original that was put in. So there's an opportunity to spruce these up, I'll say a little bit. The blue building that's closest to the street actually needs some structural work. If you drive by, you'll see there's quite a sag in the roof, and we were in the basement the other day. I mean, it's could use some shoring up, I'll say. So there's some money that needs to be spent, which we're willing to do. And so we're asking for your guidance, and just to speak on Tassos a little bit, who I've known for a long time, and but I think he's done an incredible number of residential projects, but he's doing the coolest project that I can imagine right now, which is rebuilding the stables for the National Park Police on the National Mall. And that is quite an undertaking. And you don't win the rights from the federal government to do a project like that unless you're incredibly talented. So I'm super fortunate to have him, assisting with this little project.
Well, thank you, John. And I don't want to take the board's time with this, and I didn't expect to be have this project mentioned, but thank you. It's exciting, and I'm excited to work with John. I always love the opportunity to work with him. We've done a number of jobs together. So my role in this project, should it move forward, is that I've always loved Kent, like everyone else, strolling up and down the street. And there's a character to the town that all of us as a group want to maintain and preserve.
Great.
So do you have any guidance for us?
You're on mute still, Donna, if you want to say something.
No, I don't. All of a sudden I had a hand on my picture and I don't know where it came from. So
It was Ty's hand.
maybe. Here it is again.
So, I know that we have been looking as a commission and in our regulations and in our plan of conservation and development for ways for adaptive reuse of places in town, of buildings in town. I thought that it was an elegant solution, or at least a proposal to adapt an existing building or buildings for multifamily residential. But I think that the regulation, the definition and the regulations don't quite fit. I think it's a great idea, and but I think that we have to find a way to fit it within the regulations, or find a way to change the regulation if that's something that the commission would be willing to do. I mean, we certainly don't want to take too much retail space away from the village center commercial and convert it to residential, but we like the idea of having residential in the commercial district. So I'm not quite sure where that leaves us.
So Matt, in our, when we rewrote the POCD, we stated that we wanted to try to create a mix of commercial and residential in the commercial district. And maybe we can adjust or add to the regulation. And seeing how we are going to speak to Glenn, who helped us write that regulation, maybe we can explore, maybe there's an easy change and or adjustment, and he can help us do that.
That's a great idea, Adam. I think that's, I think that by having a primary use and then a couple of and then a secondary use or an accessory use might be the way to skin the cat. That's, I'm not sure that we're allowed to have 2 accessory uses on the property. But I think let's ask Donna to ask Glenn for some advice, and to have Donna walk Glenn through what we think we would like to, what the applicant is looking for, and what we would like to see. I'd be interested to hearing what Daryl and Wes thought about these 3 structures on the one lot becoming residential versus being somewhat of a mixed use.
Have you done any analysis on what the occupancy potential is for those units once they're converted?
There's almost no rental units available in town today. So the potential, as a rental is very, very high. I mean, that's part of why we're interested in it, right? I think if you do a search, there's maybe in all of Kent, there's currently 2 houses available for rent.
I was asking, like, how many units do you see there? What is the occupancy potential of those
The
units?
configuration, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Is that what you're asking?
Yep.
So.
But your point is good as well that you added in there, so.
The early look at it, and Tassos, jump in if I'm wrong, but would be that the railroad car would be either a studio or a 1-bedroom. The little blue building would be a 1-bedroom. And the larger yellow building that's closest to the Pizza Garden would be a 2-bedroom.
That's correct. Yeah, that's what we're looking at.
And the railroad building can, you'd have to put in a kitchen and a bathroom?
There's a half bath in there now, but we'd need a full bath. And we would envision that having an efficiency like kitchenette type of thing, right? I think it doesn't need to have, a Wolf commercial range in a railroad car. But it can be a nice place where people can, fix a meal.
There's enough space there for a decent studio. A sitting area, a small area with an efficiency kitchen, and the full bath converted.
And just a point of information for myself, that railroad car now I believe that you can see this, the mechanism underneath, right? The wheels and the suspension system. Would that have to change? You wouldn't have to skirt that whole thing and make it look less like a railroad car.
No,
I
no,
hope.
no, no, no.
All right, that's all I need to know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'd like to preserve the character as much as possible. Just make sure that the buildings comply with code and insulate and basically make them livable, but not change the exterior character if we can help it.
Tassos, is there a,
By the way, Adam, I just saw your name pop up, and I apologize for not saying hi to you before.
Hi, Tassos. How are you?
We'll have to talk privately another time.
Is there a bathroom in the railroad car now?
Half bath.
There's a half bath. Okay.
Steve Penner here. Just I'm working with John and Andrew on this project, and just as reference, on the other side of the Kent Pizza Garden was a mixed-use building. I think it's 21 Railroad Street, that has now since been converted into a two-family. The owner now is a realtor with our office at William Pitt Sotheby's. He has no problem renting either one of those units, and I think it just kind of underscores the demand for rental and residential in the downtown. And I to another point, I don't understand why it could not fall under, on page 59 of the regulations, the adaptation of existing building or buildings into a multifamily residential. Seems like that was kind of written. I know that that regulation was written for Siberian Outpost years ago. But I think I don't understand why it couldn't also apply to this property as well.
Which one are you looking at, Steve?
I think it's page 59 of the regulations.
It's 60, Steve. It's 60.
Is it
It's number
the
20.
adaptation? The adaptation of an
Yeah.
existing building or buildings for multifamily residential use. I mean, I don't think that this is a multifamily. There are there's multi-single families, but I don't think it's a multifamily. That's what I was getting hung up on, was the definition of a multifamily.
Well, there's a multifamily building, and then there's a multifamily property. I think you're correct. A multifamily building is a congregated set of dwellings with a single entrance and a vestibule of some sort.
Right.
This is you're right. It's kind of a hybrid. It's a property, multifamily property, but not a multifamily building.
Right. And then what you have to do is you'd have to see whether or not you would designate one of them as a primary and then have an accessory, but you can only have one. And then what do you do with the other structure? So, we looked at different variations, and we couldn't get one to fit. What we saw was the definitions in the Village Center Residential 1 that we could kind of pick from and create a whole nother regulation in the commercial district.
I just see a much cleaner way, because if you look at that 26, it says adaptation of existing building or buildings for multifamily residential use, not for multifamily residential buildings.
Right.
It's stating that you're allowing multifamily uses in this zone if you're adapting existing buildings. And I think that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to take this non-conforming kind of property and change the use on the three separate buildings and have them and be residential. And I think that regulation, I feel, can be interpreted that way.
I think it would have to be adapted at the beginning of 4124. 4124-1 is any building containing 5,000 or more square feet of floor area, which these buildings don't. But I see what you're saying. But we would have to make some alteration to the regulation, because right now, the way I look at it, this regulation is for buildings of 5,000 square feet or more.
That's not how I would That's not how I interpret your regulations, sorry.
Oh, I don't agree with you, Adam. I think that one says that you can construct in any building containing 5,000 square feet or more of floor area via a special permit. That's basically what it's saying. I don't think it's saying that this actually goes with number 26. I think that's just another avenue of building something new that's 5,000 square feet.
Okay, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's the way that I read it, as, you know, it's separate and apart.
And I don't necessarily remember when that regulation was written for the adaptive reuse wanting to be as restricted necessarily to multi-family unit as opposed to multifamily usage. So I think there is a little bit of a gray interpretive area there, if that solves our desire for this specific application or future application.
How did the railroad car end up there? And what was its initial use? And were they always all the same owners? For the three
Oh, the
buildings?
history.
I don't know the history down there at all.
I just remember being a kid and having Jacques Kaplan have an art gallery inside the railroad car. And according to Andrew's historical deep dive, he thinks it's probably was placed there in the 80s. Andrew, do you?
Yeah, it was sometime around the 80s. Oh yeah, so when I looked at the aerial images from the 70s, it was not there, but then when we looked at them in the mid 80s, it was there. So it's at some point between those two aerial images that they took that it arrived there. From what I can tell, there's a gentleman who took took on a big project of renovating those three buildings in the late 70s or early 80s. And that's when he then brought in Jacques to open up the galleries in those two spaces. There's a few New York Times articles that kind of reference them doing the work, but there's not too much detail. And I'm waiting to hear back from the Historical Society about what they know on those buildings.
Can't hear you.
Good.
We frozen.
How about now?
Now it's great.
All right, great. Sorry about that. I'm having a hard time finding the definition for multifamily dwelling in the regulations. I'm going back to Steve's comment or his interpretation of that section in our regulation, but I want to tie it back to what we really mean by a multifamily dwelling, and I'm finding, you know, a two-family dwelling.
If you go to page 13,
Okay.
dwelling related terms,
Yes.
dwelling multiple,
Dwelling.
multiple, a building containing 3 or more dwelling units.
Okay. So that's where you're coming up with, that's how you're interpreting it, that it's a building. Whereas Steve's saying that's the adaptive reuse of a building or buildings into multifamily dwelling units. So maybe we're adapting through construction by combining them into a multifamily dwelling.
Well, the section, the 4100 412426 basically says mentions multifamily residential use. They're not defining it as a building that has many dwelling units. They're basically allows for the use, residential use, and then the phrase A says that there should be at least 4,000 square feet of lot area for each dwelling unit. So then it doesn't sound to me like they're specifying that they should be grouped. At least the way I read it.
Yeah, okay. Well, you're talking, the people who we're talking to now are the people who who wrote the regulation. So
Okay,
we,
I
we
apologize.
just have to decide. I think we have to decide as a group as to what we think this means and then find a way to make it work. And that, yeah, so I think that our path forward here is to decide as a commission whether we think that this adaptive reuse of these 3 buildings as residential units works for us within our understanding of the regulations and our understanding of the plan of conservation and development. And if it does, then we ask Glenn, our planning partner, if he thinks that fits within our regulations and can interpret it the way Steve does, or if he thinks that we need to do something different in the regulations to make it work. So I for one, believe that this would be a great use for that space. I said that before. I'm only, I don't carry any extra weight because I'm so good looking. So I'll listen to the balance of the commission tell me what we think we should do.
I also think that it's a great use for those buildings. I don't see how the existing regulation really matches it, and I'd be more comfortable if we, unless Glenn thinks it does, if we could adjust it so that it really does work with those 3 different structures becoming rental units.
Which, correct me if I'm wrong, if we're adjusting the regulations, it will require some more protracted timeline, right?
It would take a few months.
And we'd be modifying the regulations like we were talking about modifying the regulations earlier in our meeting, right?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
But if Glenn thinks that it works, Steve thinks that it works, and I respect what Steve has to say. And if Glenn really thinks that it does work, then we can look at it differently.
Okay, so then I would suggest that, I'm not sure we need a motion, but I would suggest that we as a commission ask Donna to speak with Glenn. She's got she understands what the conversation is and what the discussion has been. And we can talk about this when we get together next month. Yes?
Is Glenn the go-to for this now, or do you have legal review as well, or does Glenn look at this stuff?
Well, I mean, it all depends on exactly what the change is. If I feel that Mike needs to get involved, then I'll get him involved, but I don't think he needs to be involved in this.
Okay.
I think really what we could try to get from Glenn is either an interpretation, what his interpretation is, because he helped us write it. So, maybe he has a better understanding of exactly what it means. What's hanging me up is, when you start looking at multifamily residential, what happens is that's more than 3 units, and what I would consider to be in one building, and that drives the fire marshal instead of not the fire marshal. And I just, I think that's one of the things that's kind of stepping in and making me look at it the way that I'm looking at it.
But if you look at it in a kind of an inverted way, if someone had a 10-acre lot in town and was going to put up, a series of 2-family, which is permitted by right in the village center commercial, and we're going to do 12 of them, would that be considered multifamily as well? Just, if they were all condominiumized and.
It all depends on the design. When I was talking to Mr. McPhee, I had explained to him, in the condos where I am, the fire marshal has no jurisdiction over my unit. And we have 4 units in one building, but we all have a separate entrance. But if you look down at the units that are what I call the garden department units, he has jurisdiction over those because there's one entrance into the building off of which those apartments have access. So therefore, they're considered multi-family and he has jurisdiction. So when the new law came in where you couldn't have propane tanks on your decks on multi-family buildings, those people had to remove their barbecue grills, but we didn't have to because we're not under his jurisdiction. So I would think that it would have to do with what the design of the actual building is before you can answer that kind of question.
I think Brookwoods may be a better kind of thought experiment where you have duplexes all on the same lot, 17 acres, and you have 30 of them. Is that considered multifamily?
I do not believe that it is because each one of those units has its own entrance.
So I mean, really what they're looking to do is do 3 single-family homes on one property.
Right. So, but then you have to start looking at what is principal and what is accessory. Because the regulations don't allow two family houses, 2 separate family dwellings on the lot.
But one could be, one could be the primary, there could be an accessory. It's just what do you do with the third one? And I thought that's the sticking point. So I like going back to the multifamily idea to see whether that works, to see whether we're barking up the wrong tree or not.
I think it's cleaner, and I think it kind of is more in keeping in what that regulation was written for, was to kind of promote housing in the downtown and to take existing, buildings and allow for more units, basically.
Adaptive reuse, absolutely. All right, so I think we have a path forward. If that is okay with first the commission members. And then with I'm going to call you guys applicants, even though you're not. That's okay with you? And
we appreciate your guidance.
Okay, so that's what we'll do, and we'll talk in a month. So Donna will continue this or table this until our next regular meeting.
I have one quick question. One idea that we had, in trying to work through this would be to attach the railroad car to the yellow building, right? And make that a single property or a single building. And we'd make it into a 3-bedroom, right? And it somewhat solves the problem of the little kitchen and the railroad car. And then we would take the blue building and make that an accessory unit. Do you think that might be an alternative? I like the approach that you're taking, but I'm just trying to figure out how to get a comfort level to move forward on this deal before I write a check next week. If I have a fallback, that would be helpful for us.
I think that Steve, you should take a look at the setbacks because the setback requirements for that accessory dwelling in the village center commercial. I know that we relaxed those setbacks. I just don't remember what they are. And I think we allowed that accessory use to be in front of. I know so you've got the railroad. So I think Railroad Street would be in front. So one would have to be the primary, and maybe you choose the building right along Railroad Street as the primary, and then the railroad car and the larger building as the accessory. I don't know. I think you should take a look at that within the regulations and see what the setbacks say and the size and the size requirements.
Under that configuration, would it be deemed a 2-family?
Well, which I think what I understood was that if you combine the railroad car with the larger building, it would become a 3-bedroom.
Yeah, but the larger one would be a single family, and then you'd have one of the other building, the remaining building, be the accessory. So, yeah,
I think that would work if you met the setbacks. Donna, do you agree with that?
Yeah, or permitted by zoning permit in the village center commercial area is a single family dwelling, 1 per lot, and a 2-family dwelling, 1 per lot. So if you were to attach the unit 3 building to the unit 2 building and make it a 2-family, and then the unit 1 building would be another family, can you do that? That's what it says, that's permitted by the zoning permit.
If you could satisfy the egresses so it would be a 2-family in 1 building. You just have to satisfy the fire marshal, right? With the egresses and the.
He doesn't get involved in 2 families, multi 3 and more.
So it just involves connecting the buildings physically. The two that are now separate, connecting them, making them into one, and then that's 1 building with 2 families inside, and then the separate building would be a 3rd family. Am I understanding that correctly?
That sounds like it could work.
But I mean, and that's what the regulation says. The regulation says permitted by zoning permit, a single family dwelling, 1 per lot, a 2-family dwelling, 1 building per lot, and then an accessory residential unit internal only in accordance with section 6200. But does that mean that it's either or does it mean and? You either have a single family or you have a resident or you have a 2-family, or is it and?
No, I don't think it's and.
That's,
Looking at it now, I don't think that word. I don't think so.
so it would be or.
Right. Oh, that could be a question. Yeah, I don't know. Single family dwelling or 2-family dwelling and accessory residential internal.
Do 2 families have to be connected?
Yeah, otherwise
they
then
do.
they're single family houses.
Yeah, I think they do. At the risk of making Steve throw something at me, I think you
No, I'm
might
just wondering.
wait until
Yeah.
next month before you write the check.
If could you do a 2-family home, that aren't connected?
No.
I don't think so.
What would happen if you split the lot?
It's very non-conforming to begin with. You have to get quite a bit of variances, I think, for setbacks and things of that nature.
Well, if you're not
One
going
other
to, if you're not
thing.
going to be changing the footprints on them, if the footprints are going to be staying the same, and you split the lot, and you make unit 3 and unit 2 a 2-family house on one of those lots, and then you make unit 1 on the 1 lot, and they're separate lots. If you're not changing the footprint on any of them, if any of the work that you're doing is all internal, I mean, you're creating non-conforming, you might be creating non-conforming lots. I don't know, we would have to sit down and actually draw the lines and figure it out. But that's a possibility.
Yeah, we could study that.
Purchase it and then split it. But I mean, see if you can split it first.
Right.
And then we wouldn't have to change the regulations.
Yeah, so
I'm just throwing that out there.
ideally,
Good idea. I'd like to try that, and that won't take long.
And then that would just be a staff permit.
Hmm.
And it actually wouldn't require any permit. Because if you're making these residential homes, if you're converting the unit, this one to make it,
but the
you would
subdivision,
you would have to do a change of use from a single family to a 2-family house.
and you'd also have to subdivide the lot.
Right.
right? Which, you know, that's not nothing.
Yeah, no, they would have to sit and actually draw it and see how it fits into the regulations to see whether or not it's possible.
And then come to us to, it's, well, unless it's a first split, which it would be,
It's not though, because they already did a cut in the back.
yeah, okay. So that's somewhat of a drawn out process too. With the subdivision, you know, then you have to follow along with the subdivision regulations and then. Yeah,
I think the section about adaptive reuse for multifamily use is probably the cleanest thing under your regulations currently, is how I'm interpreting things.
I agree with that, Steve. So let's go forward with the path that we established a few minutes ago and see where that lands us in 30 days.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're welcome. And
Thank you
yeah,
very much.
interesting.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna keep that on the agenda, right?
Yes, please. And then let's I think we're back at 6B2, which is going through the POCD, the first 18 pages. It is 9:30, a little after. I suggest that well, what do you guys want to do? Do you want to do this, or do you want to talk about 9C and let the Alt Fests go to bed?
I think it's too late for POCD.
Do you want a special meeting for the POCD?
It's going to come down to that because every zoning meeting, this happens.
Yeah.
It really does.
I also think it ends up being a longer discussion. It may seem like it's not going to be, but it's going to be. So I think it's better off on a special.
Okay. Fine. I was holding out hope on the one hand that we would be done before now, and on the other hand, I was holding out hope that we would get everything done and still be done by now.
That never happens.
So then I agree that let's table the 6B2, and Donna can help us schedule a special meeting.
Yeah, table it to, and I'll do a doodle poll.
Okay,
6B5.
that's next. So we'll move on to the next item is 6B5 is food trucks. And there's nothing in the packet about food trucks, and so I think this is just Donna giving us an update on where we are with the.
No, I left it on, I put it on here because you guys decided at the last meeting that you wanted to talk about this, that you didn't want this to be going to the Board of Selectmen, and that some of you thought that it would be something that really needed to be under the purview of the the Planning and Zoning Commission. So I put it on the agenda for discussion about where it should be.
Well, I know there was some pretty serious blowback from the merchants in town with regard to the flippancy maybe that it was being addressed with, and I'm not sure whether we should be talking whether it's I'm not sure whether food trucks should be us or whether food trucks should be somebody else. But I would suggest, based on this just being on the agenda for us to discuss, I would suggest we table it until some future date. Is that kicking the can down the road too much?
No.
No, it works for me. I mean, I know that the selectmen did talk about it, and I know Alyssa was at the meeting and was upset that the merchants were not contacted, and that they weren't brought into the discussion on how it should be handled. And as a result of that, they ultimately put a moratorium on food trucks through the pandemic. And that once the pandemic was over, they would revisit food trucks.
Okay, so
That
we've got a
was-
little bit of time to
Yeah.
decide what we want to do, if anything.
Right, so that was how they left it. So we can take it off the agenda, you know, we already have 2 things on the agenda that we keep carrying forward.
Donna, if and when we put it back on, it might be interesting for our own sake of discussion, so we're not talking without any knowledge, to at least see a copy of New Milford's variance program for it. Just something somewhere that's ever been done to address food trucks, other than the potentially it's a peddler's thing, which I think everybody agrees it probably is not a peddler's license. But anyway, just for the future, if it would be, rather than just
Don't
saying
know.
food trucks, we might have something to talk from. is all
Right.
I'm saying.
Well, I know Sharon has been discussing it, and it was in the newspaper today that they've tabled their discussions as well at this point in time. So, yeah, I mean, that's fine. We can pull together information,
Right.
something for Ty to do when she has some downtime. Look for some food truck ordinances.
I just don't know where you would put food trucks.
That's the issue. I mean, you know, the only place that they might be able to put it is, you know, and I'm sure that Susie's not going to give up her Kent Farmers Market use. And then really, you know, where else would they go?
There's no place else.
Right.
There's no,
Yeah, unless they put it up in Emery Park, or they put it down in South Commons, or, you know, something like that.
and what would
What
that
use?
serve? Yeah.
Because they would have to be able to get permission from the state if they're going to put it anywhere up and down 7 or 341. Town can't give them permission to operate on state property.
And there's no bathrooms, you can't be close to the other restaurants. It's just not gonna work.
Well, I think, you know, like, I think Alice was correct, you know, if you had something to look at to see what others are doing, like New Haven has one whole area that's designated just, I think it's on the water. It's just food trucks. And if you're driving on 95, I think, 95 go through New Haven? And you see them all lined up in this one parking area right on the water. There's 20, 25, 30 of them. And they're just piled in there selling their stuff, you know, all different types and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, that's New Haven. You know,
Okay,
unless-
so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all right. But I think, you know, trying to pull together some ordinances or regulations would be a good idea.
So we're gonna take this off the agenda for now?
Yeah, and in the meantime, we'll do a little bit of research and see what everybody else is doing.
Okay, fine. Agenda item number 8A, we've previously tabled. Agenda item 9A, administrative permits and certificates of compliance. Any comments? The member listing with the 2021 meeting dates, they stay all, hold on, I think that they all follow along with the second Thursday except for November.
Yeah, because of Veterans Day. Veterans Day is always on November 11th. It doesn't fall on a Friday or a Monday.
Okay,
So this year it falls on a Thursday.
fine. So we'll, that's the only change so far. And will you, okay, so you've got Mark listed as properly as Secretary Treasurer here. And then any comments? Let's talk about 9C, which is the letter from the Altfests and I'll call it the Colvin Altfest letter or Altfest Colvin letter. So Donna, do you have anything to report? Do you have any comments to make before we talk about the letter itself?
No?
And are there any comments from the commission before we maybe ask Ellen or Rob to make any comments? Okay, then I'll leave it to you, Ms. Alfest. Oh, you're on mute.
Did you ask if we wanted to make comments?
Yeah, Tom, would you like to comment on your letter, or should we just go into the discussion?
I guess I do. I mean, I meant to say, first of all, I meant to say Adam, not Wes. So that in my letter, I said that I attributed a comment to a Wes that was Adam. But I think that it's just the question I have for the commission is, what do you do when like a powerful organization, and that's becoming really dominant in our town and in this commission, doesn't comply with the rules? Like, what kind of power do we have as a town, or does the commission have to take any action against them? I know that's not something that happens very often in the town. I mean, I was thinking to this building in New York that I heard about last year that was built 55 stories high, and it turned out that it wasn't allowed to be that high. And the city could have said, look, we know that what's done is done, but they made this, the building developer take down those floors, and in some ways, like pulling up like 100 strawberry plants or relocating them seems like a grievous, penalty. But this isn't like a person that's being penalized like your Aunt Sally. This is a big organization that just keeps stepping outside the bounds. So what can be done to deter that ongoing behavior, and when does it become like they can just do whatever they want, and the camp, will say, well, why do we have to come to you? Highwatch doesn't come to you, and then everyone just does what they want. So like, that's something I'm curious about, what kind of teeth, what kind of things that can be done as a punishment, and also as a deterrent, a future of this, and a breaking of this pattern that's just going on and on and on, and what kind of oversight and how can happen on maybe on an ongoing basis with the means that we have as a town, and I guess those are, my main, really, I don't know, I looked up online, and it said, violating the local zoning laws can cause serious financial damage to the offender. The violator may suffer civil penalties and even be required to remove the illegal structure or addition at a significant cost. And a criminal proceeding may impose fines or even imprisonment. Obviously, I don't know anyone should go to prison, but it seems like there should be some recourse to, if the commission finds that there have been violations. So that,
I think that's for me, that's where I would start, right?
Yeah.
Are there violations to the approval that we, the use that we approved as a commission to 47 Carter Road?
Right.
So the application when they were here in front of us for 47 Carter Road, they told us that they were going to be using the existing house for staff housing, the existing residents there for staff housing. So without understanding who's living there now, I don't know that they're in violation of that component of our approval. Now, if they've got residents living there, then that would certainly be in violation of the approval. But I don't know how we can prove that.
But I thought excuse me, I thought that they said, because I asked, how they call it Hope House. And I asked how many people lived there, and he said 6.
The Hope House, wasn't the Hope House on 54? Wasn't the Hope House on the parcel that's on the same side of the road as 62? So no, I'm sorry, 67. No, 62. 62 and 54 are on the same. 62 is the big parcel, and 54 is the parcel that was absorbed by 62. And the Hope House was where they had people living, but they told us that they wouldn't have anybody living. But that was a different application. So that house, there's 6 units, but they said they weren't going to use it at all for residential, and they were only going to use it for program.
I don't think that that's the Hope House. I think 54 is the little red cabin, little red log cabin. And at one point in time, they were going to be using it as a residence. Then the fire marshal came in and said, if you are going to use that as a residence on a commercial basis, you need to sprinkle that building. And they said, no, we're not going to do that. So they could not use it as a residence.
And that's part of the approval from the other application. So where's the Hope House?
I think the Hope House is on the campus. It's one of the original houses that was built at 62 when it was first started, and back in the 40s.
Then
So I
maybe
think
I'm
we should
using
limit.
the wrong name, but I did specifically ask him how many people lived on that property where the stables are, and he said 6.
Right. So he says to us, and this is one of the documents that is included in our resolution of approval. Just a handful of staff, not patients, will live on the property. So a handful. Maybe that's 6. Maybe you're remembering right, Ann, that it's 6. I don't know how many rooms are in there and what would be allowed, but them having people live there seems to be in keeping with our approval of their application.
This is my problem with Highwatch, and I think they do great work, but they say a handful of people. We say, okay. And they say therapeutic practice, and we say, okay. And we don't, we give them all the rope they need. And I think we need to not do that anymore.
So the question then becomes, I mean, just to sort of streamline the conversation, that's in violation of the approval that we gave to them for 47 Carter. So and that's what I'd like to know. So I know that after we gave them approval and they told us they weren't going to do really too much, they went and they cut down a bunch of trees. And they came back to us and said, sorry, we cut down a bunch of trees. Did we give them, we gave them approval? We included that as part of the approval after the fact?
The cutting of the trees actually fell underneath wetlands as a forestry operation. So anytime you cut down above a certain linear foot of tree, or you harvest for commercial purposes, you need to get a forestry application from the Inland Wetlands Commission. And that's where it came in. I mean, John was not happy about it, and I don't know if the commission was happy that they went and they cut it down, but Inland Wetlands was even more unhappy. And actually, we did a site walk, we walked it. they had some cleanup that they needed to do. And then inland wetlands told them, anytime you're with the rest of this property, we want to know what you're doing. So that was something that was a directive from the Inland Wetlands Commission. And then when they came in to do the pole barn, they came to Inland Wetlands first, just to let, even though Inland Wetlands wasn't going to give them a permit, they wanted to know what was going on. Then they came to the commission to put up the pole barn. The covered riding ring, I guess, is really what it is. It's not the barn, it's the riding.
Right.
The covered riding ring.
So it's from what I can see, the cutting of those trees, not only was it they shouldn't have done it from an inland wetlands point of view, but they shouldn't have done it because of what we told them, or what they told to us, that there was going to be very minimal impact to the meadow forest, or something like that. But we since gave them, they came back to us and said, whatever. And the Inland Wetlands Commission said, okay, but going forward, you have to do this.
Right.
So what, outside of that, what have they violated now? So there's reference in the letter that they've done some renovation to the interior of the pole barn.
And they put up the rope course without permits.
Well, we approved the rope course the ropes course in our original approval for 47.
After the fact. It was up already.
They put it up and then they asked for forgiveness.
Okay, so what have they done now that they haven't asked permission for?
You know what? I don't know what they've done that they haven't asked for permission. There has been a further expansion of High Watch. So they bought 48 Carter Road a year ago, which is the little yellow house, and they have people who live there. And I believe they're working across the street at 47 because when I'm hunting, I've watched them walk across the street in the mornings. And now they've bought the Palmer's house. And I think they're renting the Roberti's house. And there's this seeming this expansion that they continue to have. They're buying up whatever properties they can. And maybe that's all fine, but they're not supposed to be expanding. And I'm wondering if this is an expansion of what they're doing. And they're just, they're getting bigger and bigger. Not
What
just.
are they going to do with the Palmer's house? It's tiny. They're going to want it to grow. It's a very, very tiny house on a decent lot. So what are they going to do with it? They're going to be happy with that? I think I think they play fast and loose. One tells you, oh, they would never sell any of their fruit or vegetables. That's just for their residents to grow and to blah, blah, blah. And then the next guy comes in and says, oh yeah, we're planning to sell that. And then he's sort of shut up by the first guy. And oh well, maybe, I don't know. I thought we were going to, it's really gotten out of hand. I think they're playing us for suckers, and just there's no end. And that, I spoke to Linda Palmer. You all heard from her a lot. She was very unsettled by their taking over the road, and she finally gave up and left. I believe that's her main reason for not being here when she had been here for many years. So, they're having their way with all of us, and pretty soon we'll all be gone. I wonder how much they give me for this house. I love my property, and they would be the last people I would sell to. I would rather sell it for much less money and not to them. But I know they're pushing everybody out. And is that what we want for Kent?
So I don't live on Carter Road. And I understand, and there's no reason for me not to believe that it's difficult. But I don't think that we as a planning and zoning commission can object to them buying a piece of property. And I wouldn't be surprised if they took that house that they recently purchased and by right put an addition on it, and then by right used it as a residential property. But there's not too much that we can do as a commission. What we can do is call out violations of things that we've approved. And so if there's something that they're doing that's in violation of what we have approved already, then we've got some teeth. But outside of that, we don't. And that's why I started out the conversation by saying, what are they doing now that's in violation of something that we allowed them to do?
Well, they said that when they were here in the fall, they said in the zoning, they said that they were using the house. The agreement was with you guys was the house was supposed to be used for staff on 47. But what was revealed, and I could listen back to the tapes if necessary, was that that's actually been turned into a sober home for residents.
If they're using it for anything other than their staff, then that's a violation.
That's what they said, because they were promoting this whole thing that they're doing over there, which included that being a sober home.
I think the thing that you have to understand is if they have gone through the program and they have graduated from the program and they have been released from the program and are no longer participating in the programs at 62 Carter Road, and they are working at 47, they're not in violation.
Absolutely. They're not in violation. Then they become people who are staff members.
Right. And
is that what's happening? Or are they working there?
I don't know. I don't know. And if you can say that they're actually patients down there, the patients of High Watch, and they're living down at 47, and the High Watch is thereby increasing their bed count, then we've got some teeth, and we can go back to the state and say they're violating their permit with you, and we can tell them that they're violating their permit with us. But without that understanding,
But I don't think it's Ellen's responsibility to find that out. I mean,
is it Donna's responsibility?
well, it's somebody's responsibility, but I don't think it's Ellen's.
Okay, well, I would like to know who's responding. And again, I'm sorry that the situation is so difficult there. I mean, and
I know, well, it's not your fault that it's, I'm not trying to say it's your fault, but I'm saying that in the meeting, they said that there were people who had graduated the program living there, but they didn't say that they were also working there. So that's something that could, if there's an inspection, that's something that could be determined. You know, like there's an inspection, there's also, you know, and also, you know, they've started a huge farming operation over there, which is that something that's allowed? Is that allowed? They said, you know, we're going to do a few plants, you know, for therapeutic reasons. I saw that the way it was approved. This is not a few plants for therapeutic reasons anymore. This is a huge farming operation. Like, you know, take away whether or not they've expanded their bed count and say that they've added a huge commercial farming operation that they're actually, you know, now trying, you know, costing you legal fees to, you know, fight for that greenhouse. Like, and then they have another greenhouse right behind it, you know, that they've said. So what's that? You know, can that be that, you know, is that a use that was not a farm before? Can that be stopped? And can they have to take out, if they're in violation, they have to move their apple trees, you know, move their maple trees, and just, you know, cease and desist.
So we approved them for agricultural use. Right. So what is that? What's agricultural use, and at what point does it become a commercial farm, and at what point And what's the level? And it sounds like you're telling us that the level is now. And who's going to make that determination? Should we ask Donna to go out there and look to see whether this seems to conform with what we approved?
Yeah, like, is it therapeutic use? It was approved not for agricultural, but for therapeutic. Is this agricultural stuff therapeutic? And Roberti came out and said no.
I don't remember it like that, honestly. When we approved them for 47, they were gonna have some horses or over there, and they were gonna use some of it for therapeutic, and I thought they were gonna do some farming, and maybe the farming is bigger than what they had implied, and possibly that, depending on what they said, to make that approval, maybe they're in some violation that way. But I don't remember it being only for therapeutic use.
See, I remember him saying gardening. He didn't say farming, he said gardening. And I remember Jason at the last meeting, somebody had asked him what is the purpose behind all of this? And he said to grow food for the kitchen to feed the members. Is that therapeutic? I don't know. He didn't start out with therapeutic. He started out with, we're growing food for the kitchen. And I'm sorry I'm being upset, but it's upsetting.
The property has always had a history of farming. I moved here in 1972 and there was a farm there, okay? And I don't think that is anything that we can tackle as a violation. We're kind of a day late and a dollar short here. The only thing we can do is to prevent any further development and expansion. And that is going to be hard because they have had their way this whole time. I would guess dollars to donuts that the next thing that comes up is they're going to develop the property across the street where the farming is. They're going to take that whole top field and do something there. This is a hopeless case in a lot of ways. You can't go backwards. You can only go forward. And the farming is not going to get you anywhere. But we have to stop the expansion in the future. And it may be too late. It may be too late. And you folks that live up there have to seriously think about if you can handle staying through this. And maybe you can't. They're on a roll. And I think this commission has tried to be fair about some things, and I think the commission has made some mistakes on other things. I have always voted against this. And I'm sorry to say, but I don't think you're going to stop this runaway train.
Why can't you stop, might I ask? Why can't you stop?
They're too big. They're too big. They've already destroyed the natural nature of the neighborhood. They have now basically changed that zone, and the town has agreed to it. So I don't know, but I think we're barking up. We're taking our heads against the wall here, and the farming should probably be the most acceptable use they have going on, at least in my opinion. I think it's temporary. Nobody has told me that. It's my gut. And I've lived here 40 years.
But this is a residential neighborhood.
It used to be. They now have a hospital on the hill. It's Hope on the Hill. And like Ann says, they do a wonderful job with what they're doing. But they have changed the complexion of the neighborhood. They have changed the complexion of the zone. And part of that, I hate to say, folks, is I agree with you. The zoning commission should have been harder, but maybe we couldn't. I don't know. I'm new to this board. but there were things approved years ago that maybe started the train wreck.
So why can't you just say no more?
Well, because you have to be fair, and they've already
what's
got this
fair?
monstrosity going.
The camp, remember that in 1984, that camp early on, there was something said, no more expansion, the camp cannot expand, like the camp from earlier tonight, the first place, why can't we have that for High Watch?
We do now. I mean, so everything that this commission, since I've been on the commission for almost 12 years, right? So everything that this commission has approved has been in keeping with the regulations. We, as a commission, 2 years ago, decided that this use was, that we didn't really think that the use was in keeping anymore with the town character. So at Donna's urging, that the commission decided to
But
take.
I don't mean to interrupt you, Matt, but this board voted for these expansions. I
There's
did
no
not.
question and as far as I'm concerned, that we voted for those because they were permitted.
True, some of it might have been. I don't know. We changed the zoning, basically.
Okay, all right. So listen, I want to find a path through this.
And Matt, question.
Go ahead, Mark.
Do these neighbors have a private right of action for alleged zoning violations next door?
No.
I don't know.
I don't know if it would end up being a civil, it would end up being a civil matter. They would need to be able to do something on their own, and that would be civil. I don't know what that is. There's plenty of discussion that we have on the record about what they were going to do with 47 Carter Road. And I think that is one of the reasons why you guys turned down the greenhouse. Because if you look at Joe Williams's email letter from 2018, when they came to us for the pole barn, and when they came to us to get the after the fact permit for the road course, he said that no additional impervious surface is proposed either, nor does High Watch expect to make any substantial changes to the farm, field, or forested open space. Just a handful of staff, not patients, will live at the property, and as noted above, only patients who reside on the main High Watch campus will participate in therapeutic activities at 47 Carter Road. There will be adequate, all existing utilities are adequate, and we expect very minimal vehicular traffic to the property. There should be no off-site impacts generated by the proposed use. We respectfully submit, therefore, that the permit be granted. This, when you look at this and the special permit, this becomes part of the record. Is this going to be something that is going to be looked for at the case when we go to court, if we go to court for the denial? Yeah, we might have to end up just letting the lawsuit play out and see what the courts are going to say. And it would be left up to the courts to determine whether or not the commission was right in denying the application because it was an expansion of its use. It's therapeutic use.
That being said, Donna, it could be beneficial for us if there was some violation that we could point to now to say they're in violation of the current application approval. And what is that? So I don't think it's the dwelling. It's certainly not the clear cutting, because we gave them an after the fact approval for that. And it's not the pole barn because we approved that. But is it a more intense use than what Joe Williams said that they were going to do? I mean, he's very clear in saying that it's going to be a very non-impactful, as you just read. The changes are going to be very low impact.
Right.
And can we point to something?
I'm almost afraid to say that we can, because we're in the middle of a lawsuit right now. I don't know how far we can actually go with this now in the middle of a current lawsuit. I do know that, you know, the house, going back through the file, the house the original house had been knocked down and a new house had been built, but it's only 2 bedrooms. How can you get 6 people in 2 bedrooms, 3 beds in each bedroom? I don't know. You know, who's responsible for that? Is it Burlington Area Health that has to step into this to look to see how many people are actually living on there? Is that the way to go? I don't know, but I honestly don't know how far we can go if we are currently in a legal situation with regards specifically to 47 Carter Road.
Alice?
Yeah, Matt, memory, I hope, serves me here. I remember a rather lengthy discussion when I think it was even the equestrian program came up, that this was a therapeutic use. And we discussed at length, none of us being experts in rehabilitation, whether we are in a position to say what their therapy uses are. If it's riding a horse, if it's breeding puppy dogs, if it's hula hoop dancing, that's their business, is rehabilitating people. And we, I think, realize that we don't tell store merchants what they can sell and what they can't. And we can't tell them what I remember that discussion very well, that their definition of a therapeutic use. I'm not sure where I'm going with that. I just remember that we felt that it was not our jurisdiction to determine that, or maybe I shouldn't say that. It seems to me that anything like this pole barn or anything else, we should always bring in perhaps a super expert on the business that they're in to advise us what is a therapeutic use. I'll also remind you, when we were approving their detox center, they had 3 witnesses, if you will, to why a rehab center needs a detox facility. And all 3 of those young men had been visitors, customers of High Watch, and they lived and worked there now. They would qualify to be in a sober home if that sober home was somewhere else. So I'm not trying to defend or say anything. I'm just throwing out that this has always been a very gray area that we've kind of worked in. And Matt's right. We've had to rely the specifics of where we're dealing with our regulations. And, you know, we went at great length about traffic and fire trucks and emergency services and ambulance services. So I've said enough. I just wanted to remind you that when they say there's people working there and they're not patients, many of the people that work there were patients. I mean, I would say a lot of their staff were once patients.
I think he actually testified to that effect, that there was between 75 and 80% of their staff are past patients.
Right.
Because
exactly.
nobody knows better when dealing with current patients what they're going to be going through, because they've gone through it themselves.
Right. Yeah.
I think the only thing that we can do is if we're finding that they are using the farming aspect as therapeutic, when we only gave them the right to use the riding ring as therapeutic, then maybe that would be the violation. But you get down to the point where we're in the middle of a lawsuit. Can we really do anything about that now? Or do we just wait and see how the lawsuit plays out?
Well, you must have an attorney who could tell you that.
Yes, we do.
I don't see any
You have to
reason.
address that to the attorney. And that's one thing I like to point out is they've bought all the attorneys in all the towns around here. I have called so many attorneys who say to me, well, my firm has a conflict of interest. I can't help you.
Yes.
And they've done that on purpose. It's not an accident. They
No, it's
bought
not.
them all up. And I think, you know, it didn't cost them that much money compared to how much they're taking in for something. And I think that's terrible. It may not be illegal, but what a thing to do. It's really nasty. I'm going to bring in some of my New York friends. My nieces and nephews are attorneys. in New York. I'm going to bring in some people who are also licensed in Connecticut, or, you know, whatever you call it, they're barred in Connecticut, you know.
Right,
That's the bar. And, you know, so that's what I'm going to have to do, because you can't find one. I've tried all the towns around here, quite far from here. Oh no, somebody they know, you know, is on the board, or is it this or that or the other. And it's really terrible it's, well, I won't say what I think it is. It has the name of a politician in it. It's quite Blankian, you know, Blankian, whatever, you know, so it's a terrible thing to buy out somebody who might oppose you or in some way, or give some knowledge to
There's a big
oppose you.
There's a big question here. The question is, did you people stop or intend to stop them from expanding, broadly speaking?
Yeah, by changing the regulation.
Right. So if you intend, then why can't you stop them from buying property that is clear they're not going to house somebody in? It's clear that they're going to be expanding, so we're quibbling over relatively less important activities. The big thing is to say, no more land.
We can't.
No, why can't you do that?
We can't we actually, I did speak to our attorney about that today, and I did ask him a question similar to that. And basically, if they are not in the program at High Watch, but they are living in High Watch's property, they are not expanding their use. It's just like me buying a house and renting it out to 3 people or 6 people so that they have a place to live. As long as the people that are in those houses are not participating actively in the therapeutic use at 62 Carter Road, they are not in violation of an expansion of their use.
Is there a rooming board?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if they are paying rent. I can't ask those questions. You know,
But
I mean,
in the regulations, is there, how many unrelated people can live in a house?
no, that's not governed by us.
I have always felt, since I have been a member of the board and these rehab groups came to our town, that we should have put a moratorium on expansion.
Oh, you muted yourself.
Sorry, did you hear
That's
me?
okay. Yeah, yeah.
Not the end, no.
Done now?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, that's a legal question, but it might be a tactic. I don't know. It was something that was considered in the late 80s when there was a huge amount of development happening. And it would just slow down the process. It may not stop them. But
we have in effect, we have put a moratorium on any sort of expansion, because it's not a permitted use anymore, what they're doing. So what Mr. Altfest is talking about doing is preventing them from buying any property. And that's not something that you can have at it. Go and hire an attorney and try to get them, see whether you can stop them from buying property up and down Carter Road. That's not our purview.
it's
Already
not
said.
possible. It's not possible. That would be considered discriminatory and unfair housing.
Yeah, I mean, so we can control what we can control, and we approved what they're doing on 67 because it was allowed by the regulation, and we approved what they were doing at 47 because it was allowed by the regulation, and we spent hours and hours and days and months talking about this, and then we decided as a group, because we thought it might be getting out of control. We said, listen, no more. And we've done that. And now we're still talking about it. So I'm terribly sorry, but we have acted in good faith. We followed our regulations. We have tried to stop them from doing and we've stopped them from the next thing, and yet we're still talking here at 10:21 on a Thursday evening. And I don't want to say that I don't want to talk about it anymore, but I don't know what else we can do. So I'm sorry to get animated, but I don't know what, unless you can point to something that there's a violation to something that we've done, I don't know what we can do. So can you help me with that? What have they violated in our approvals?
I just thought that, I can go through the tapes again. I'm not blaming you at all. for any-
I know you're not blaming me, but I have to find time to work on other things.
I know, we're all going crazy,
Yeah,
like,
sure.
we want this, I'm trying to stop this forever, you know what I mean? I'm trying to, this is very frustrating for us, and we're just, I want to put this to bed too, so I thought that because I thought that the agricultural use was the key. I don't, because they said it was for therapeutic use, now they're running a huge agricultural operation that involves many, many people. And they've put in hundreds of plants and trees and stuff that is above a residential use for that property. I don't see how even though agriculture is approved in that area.
But Ellen, they told us that these new therapies would include equine therapy, a ropes course, and a climbing wall, and a therapeutic agricultural program and accompanying kitchen facility.
But I don't think that this is not therapeutic like riding a horse. This is a commercial thing, a commercial. It's not patients putting their hands in the ground.
So help me prove that.
Okay, I'll do what I can. I'll look into it. I don't know how
Yeah,
to
we'll speak
prove
to
it without-
people, but we find a lot of people aren't willing to talk. They know things, but they're not willing to talk about them.
I can, see, we could talk to an attorney and see what crosses the line. I don't,
You can never prove that about the farming.
you can't.
What they have to do is have a couple of patients go there once in a while and it's therapeutic. They didn't say that only patients were going to be there. They never said that. They said that they would utilize the farm for some therapeutic use. In fact, they even had told us they were going to limit the number of people that could go over.
What's happening at Roberti?
They're using that too.
They're suing us, is what's happening.
Roberti is suing you?
No, the Highwatch.
I watch, but are they using Roberti's place now? Did I hear you say that?
I didn't say that. Donna, Roberti is suing us, right?
Yes, Roberti is suing us. When they came before the commission to for a change of use for their house at 175 Carter Road, to turn it into a convalescent home, and we denied it. So they are suing us under the ADA in federal court. So, sorry about that. Oh, Ginger, you just put me in airplane mode. Ginger, you are dead meat. Get down.
With this too.
Okay.
We have to deal with it by being here, but you guys have to deal with it too. I know it's a lot of pressure on you. And I'm sorry that that's happening. I'm sorry we're sitting here at 11 o'clock talking about it. And
I'm sorry, my cat put me in airplane mode.
Oh.
Yeah. So anyway, so Roberti is suing us for the denial of their application for their change of use.
well, you have the $50,000 that Highwatch gives the town every year, so you can maybe that could become a legal fund.
I don't think the first selectman would let us use it for that. She wants to be able to pay the state trooper fee.
Good. I don't know. It's, yeah,
I'm sure this is not what you
who
wanted
just
to
want to
hear.
live here with a family and whatever, and turn it into a medical town or whatever they think they're doing. I don't see them doing all that much. I don't see horses being ridden. I know one member said that they did, but I'm up and down the road. We walk on the road, we drive on the road, and I don't see the horses, and I don't see people there, and I don't see anybody taking care of the horses, and I don't see anybody riding the horses. So how it helps them to think of horses, you could see a horse movie.
About a violation. Has anyone heard about them having building permits in violation for the, is that something that people have heard about, like for the pole barn or anything like that? Because that's something I had heard about, but I don't know if anyone knows about that as a violation.
I'm going to drop from the meeting. I agree with Matt, and I am tired of hearing this endlessly rehashed.
Okay.
And second guessing the decisions that we made in the past. I don't agree with Karen at all. The decisions we made after hours and hours of discussion. We did what we thought was the right thing. I know the neighbors have opposed every single application they've ever put in. We listened to them all patiently and decided to do what we decided to do. I've had enough. Bye.
Hi.
Mark.
All right, so we're going to let you all go too, and it was very nice when you said let the Altfest go to sleep. So I think we're going to take our exit too, and we're going to do more research and let you know if we get anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all for reconsidering.
Yes.
Good night,
Okay.
everybody.
Good night.
Night. Okay. So I think we're somewhat down to a skeleton crew. And I feel like it's I don't know. I'm sorry that I wasn't able to manage to get us out of here before now. But we still have a couple of things to talk about, and if you don't mind, let's stick it out. I think that the next agenda item is agenda item 10, and I would move that we go into executive session at 10:29.
Second, or I move it, however.
That's great.
All right, I'm going to stop recording at this point in time on both things. So just give me a second here. That stopped, and let's. Okay, you're recording. You're all set.
All right, so Adam has made a motion to come out of executive session.
Somebody.
Karen's going to second it.
All right.
And then so the last item on the agenda was to discuss what we discussed at the in executive session, and I think that the path forward is to let our attorney, let Mike Ziska continue to speak with Highwatch's attorney, continue to follow the case and report back to us what he thinks the course of action is.
Okay.
That motion worthy, Donna?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, that's great.
Okay. Thanks everybody for sticking it out. I think that I have to come up with some strategy to move the meetings along. I know there's a lot to cover, but there's must be a better way for us to get through the issues without being here so late and without losing some members to fatigue. So I'll think about that and let you guys know what I'm thinking at our next meeting.
Matt, I'll just leave this for you to think about. The first hour was on the discussion of not a proposal, not a permit, but just a roundabout about the residential conversion of 3 buildings. Oh, that took an hour. Just so you, in other words, there was no vote, there was nothing. It was just what's possible and what isn't. And by the way, I'm not saying it shouldn't happen, and it was very useful. I'm just in the scheme of the agenda.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too, Alice, that
Yeah.
there should be, there should be a hierarchy of things that are important and time limits on each of those things that maybe aren't vote worthy. But
Well, I mean, it's important, but there was no way there was anything to do except just, chat about it kind of thing. I'm sure you'll figure it out, Matt.
no, okay. Without belaboring it any longer, I will move to adjourn.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Good night. Everybody take care.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.